Hey everybody, it's Mir. I'm back again with Jarkey Bacon.
Oh, it's me. We're back at it again. More Planet Test. Happy
Yep, more
days.
Planet Test. We're here to finally put this one to bed. This is the last part of Volume 4. We said in the previous video, I'm sure if you're watching this one, you've probably watched it, but I'll say it again. Volume 4 is a very long volume, and we kind of split the chapters in a way where we're able to talk about what felt like a concise, idea, chapters that flowed well together, because the whole volume doesn't just, flow in like a continuous, narrative. It kind of has different sections. So last video was about the sort of middle section of this volume, which were the chapters involving Fee and the little arc that she goes through. And then this video is about the extra chapter that was at the end of last volume. And then we have the first two chapters of volume 4, and then the last two chapters of volume 4. So we're kind of a bit all over the place here, but if you haven't read it, you'll see from the discussion why this makes sense. And if you have read it, you probably already understand why it makes sense.
These chapters flow very naturally together. I read them all the first time, but the second time I read them in the chunks that we were recording in. And yeah, no, it feels very well put together, and like when you read them like this. So it's just one of those interesting things where it's like Yukimura's planning isn't like, he's getting there still, and he brings, and we'll talk about this probably quite a bit, but you can see the beginning of a couple of ideas.
Yes, absolutely.
They come out later, which is super fascinating. So,
but okay, yeah. I don't know if we want to talk about. Do you want to do overall thoughts on the volume now, or do you want to save it till the end when we do just kind of overall thoughts on the whole thing?
Probably the end. I mean, overall thoughts are a little bit hard, and I'll probably change my opinion as we go through in a way.
That's probably fair.
A few things to chew through in this one.
I will say, combined with the Fee chapters, this is definitely the best volume, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Fee chapters in general are probably my favorite, but it's tough. Like Planet Test, as I've said before, in my opinion, first time you read it through, it's good, but the second time is where it really starts getting great, in my opinion, and that's when it starts really hitting its stride. And I do wonder, like, with the anime, we kind of talked about this before the call with all the various manga anime adaptations and stuff, and we're watching the Vinland Saga season 2 anime together, and we're talking about that, and like, just this is like just comparing it. So this is on Kyle Entertainment's second channel. If you want to see that, we're probably gonna be doing that next week, I think. But it's just interesting how for this manga, I feel like lots of the time I get ahead of myself on the pacing. It's not like my natural reading speed. I generally read a bit too quickly on it. I find that's not a bad thing. It's just when I come around the second time, I pick up on a lot of stuff I missed, and I wonder if the anime will help. Miz already kind of said the anime is very, very different, but I do wonder if the anime will help keep things in check for me personally more. But very, very good.
The anime is definitely interesting. I still haven't finished it yet. I might make a separate. I don't know if it's something we're gonna end up wanting to talk about together, or I might just talk about it myself. I don't know. But I haven't finished it yet. But it's strange. It's a strange adaptation. We've talked about it in Discord back and forth a little bit, but I mostly feel like it seems to be a attempt to take a lot of the ideas that Planet Test tries to do and a lot of the great chapters that have great ideas, and then try to essentially string them together in a more cohesive way and explore the characters a bit more and get more character moments, because Planet Test really doesn't waste time. It just it does what it needs to do, and then it moves on. And it feels like the anime is willing to give you something that you'd probably call filler, but I just enjoy the characters so much.
Appropriately so.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but I mean, it does a lot of things that seems like it's trying to make a more cohesive experience from the beginning to the end, like starting with the introduction of Tanabe, rather than starting with Yuri's stuff. I don't remember exactly how many episodes I finished, but I haven't even seen an adaptation of Chapter 1 yet, so I have no idea where the Yuri stuff is going to be, if it's even going to be there. Really hope they didn't cut it, because that's some of the best content. But Yeah, definitely very interesting. Some of the voice acting choices is kind of funny too. Yuri has the voice of Dio. I think I told you.
Oh
Which is
yeah, you did.
very
That's
funny.
crazy.
And
Yeah.
the other one that I noticed that was funny to me was I finally got to the episode where they do chapter 2 and Nono's there and I hear her voice and it's May from Guilty Gear. And
No way.
I heard it immediately and I
No.
paused it. I'm like, I know exactly who this is.
She's gonna
So
start.
I can hear her say
the dolphin.
Totsugeki.
Yeah, the dolphins are coming at you. Oh my word. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I was super. I know it's like 2000s, and dubs are like notoriously not very good at that point in time. But I'm so tempted to have a little gander at the dub because I'm a bit
really
of
wanna
a.
check it
I
out.
personally quite like dubs. I'm just because I generally find I get more emotionally attached to the characters because I can hear the subtle
Oh, yeah.
voice acting better in a language I understand. But that's the double-edged sword because when you understand the nuances of the language better, it's much more easy to be like, this doesn't feel authentic or real or good acting, basically. While
Yeah.
Japanese just tends to be like, I think it's good voice acting. It
Sounds good.
enough
Yeah,
to me.
exactly.
So so I tend to give a little bit of a gander at the dub, but who knows? It may be very interesting for a small time 2000s anime. So
Yeah. What is surprising though, it does seem like it had a pretty, I guess, a big reception. Like I was watching it online and I saw just some comments and I'm like, it's just kind of surprising to me to see how many people are watching it. Like to some people, this is like a classic and they probably never even watched Vinland Saga, and that's just such an interesting
that's kind of nuts, isn't it?
perspective to me. Like
Yeah.
ever since we started reading it, I've just heard Planetests be mentioned offhand by like random people. Like I was watching there's one guy on YouTube, I forget his name, but he does like a best of spring X year, just like different the different like seasons of the
Does
year.
he wear a red
Here's
jacket?
what was I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay.
He's
'Cause-
Irish. I know he's Irish.
Oh no. Okay. Oh. Is that a Super Eye Patch Wolf?
There it is. There it
okay.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
He mentions Planetests in a recent video.
Really?
He was just like,
Oh.
this is like one of my like favorite like anime, like sci-fi anime of all time. Right below Planetests or something. And I'm like, what? Like, it just shocks me to hear how.
Which video was this? So was it in like
It's
one of his spring reviews? Or?
Yeah, one of his recent like seasonal recaps.
Okay. Because I do watch his videos. I feel like I would have clocked if he says Planet Test.
Maybe-
I
might be-
It may be a different Irish bloke. But,
No, it could just be a different like manga anime media
Well-
channel. I have a lot of them I'm sub to.
Well, so the first time I heard of Planet Test was when I was watching, basically, what's his name? Glass Reflection. He has a red jacket. What's his name? Arakawa, but he's like an old school, like he's been doing anime YouTube for a long time. But then Vinland Saga comes along and he's like, oh, I'm Canadian, and this is kind of like talking about my part of the. Well, it seems because they got Vinland in the title, so he's quite excited.
Right.
That's like the Viking part of Canada and whatever. And then he's like, also what I really enjoyed. This is the same author as Planetess. And I was like, huh. And it's like a sci-fi manga from the 2000s. Like, and it's like, anyway, it was just very interesting how he talked about it, but he talked about it in very high regard, how he liked it a lot. So, I mean, and it seems like lots, like if you go on the subreddit, it's not like active because it's so old, but
Yeah.
like there's like 6K people watching, following it.
Wow,
It
yeah.
seems like it's got a decent number of upvotes and people really enjoying the characters and stuff like that. And anyway, I do wonder, because you kind of mentioned with the anime, if what Yukimura thinks about the anime adaptation. Like,
I was
does he
thinking
feel
that
like
too.
It's, they've kind of moved around with the work. I know, like with Vinland Saga, I mean, he probably really appreciates it. That's been because with Vinland Saga, in some interviews, that he's basically kind of said that, he's actually wanted more anime original content, and Yabata's been like,
Yeah.
had to hold him back and stuff like that, because Yukimura always feels like he rushes stuff. And to me, Vinland Saga is paced pretty perfectly for my manga reading speeds, which is pretty quick. So like, and it's both paced way slower than Planet Test, that's for sure. So anyway, it's just interesting to kind of hear his opinion, but
he does seem like the kind of person, because I think he said in an interview very recently, because like a lot of with all the Einar stuff that was going on in season 2 and people complaining, they kind of responded to that, and he seems to really like the idea of somebody kind of taking his work and making something else out of it, making like their own thing, their own piece of art from it. Yeah. Which is definitely an interesting perspective. I do wonder if he feels like the Planet Test anime went too far out of what he was trying to go for, or maybe if it like fixed the problems he had with his like the early parts of the manga. I'm definitely so interested.
Yeah, and I think if he feels like he's trying to, he didn't plan things out as well, or he wasn't able to touch upon things that he wanted to because of the time constraints. I think that's partly why he likes the original stuff. And I think what he likes about Yabata is, while he is adding stuff to Aina, to Yukimura is still fundamentally the same character. Right. And it's just like you take the same character, but you explore them in a different and maybe more deep and new way. And so that's why he appreciates it. I mean, maybe he would be happy for someone to kind of just take it in a bit of a more unique direction, but I think that's one thing why he really, really likes Yabata and his crew.
Right. Okay. All right. Tangent aside, I'm gonna go off on another tangent a little bit here, but we're gonna get started on the extra phase with Goro. So when I started this, the first thing when I started taking my notes, the first thing I was thinking about was, what makes this an extra phase? Why is it called extra phase? Like, it's not like the other chapters are like, connecting to each other in a way where this extra chapter doesn't fit. Like, it could have just been chapter, 17, was it?
Yeah, and was this added in later? Yeah, okay, I didn't realize
that was my question. So I went down a research rabbit hole, and I discovered a couple of things.
Okay.
One, there is like absolutely no log of, like, no records I could find of when each chapter came out. So I wanted to see first, okay, what was the timeline for all the chapters, so then I can know where this extra one would come. Was it written just for the volume, or was it actually released in this order? And so I was looking online for that. I was able to see when each volume was released, but I was not able to find any evidence of when each chapter released. All I know is that the series started serialization in January 1999 and then ended serialization in January 2004, so 5 years later.
Okay, hang on. So hold up. You said January it started in January serialization.
Yep, January 1999, ended in January 2004.
Okay, interesting.
So that's, it's 5 years for 26 chapters. So if he was just going bi-monthly with occasional breaks, this amount would make sense.
Yeah, okay. So one thing I've done in the past, and I have there's literally no sources attached to this, so this could be really wrong.
Okay.
But basically, so I'm not sure if you remember, I made I updated a hiatus chart for Vinland Saga at one point.
Right.
And so I just typed in Planet Test hiatus chart, and there's a Reddit for this. I don't know how accurate it is at all, but it kind of gives. And
let me see.
I don't know if it says extra on here. I mean, I have no clue how
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah, there's no extra.
But then there's this weird thing where he had 4 chapters for 4 weeks in a row.
Which
is
wow.
Wacky. So
are those the fee chapters? I think those are the fee chapters. No, 20. Yeah, those are the fee chapters.
Those are the fee chapters. So. And then double weekly morning manga issue. I don't know what that means, but there's also this other thing.
That means there's 2. Because it's week. I thought this was a monthly manga. I mean, a monthly magazine, morning. All right, whatever.
I think it is, but I guess it is weekly. Yeah.
So what I was trying to do, I was trying to look for maybe archives of every morning magazine release.
Yeah.
But no archives of that. on their website, there's no archives of older series, just their current stuff. So I wasn't able to find any kind of, I guess, record of when each chapter dropped. That height chart is certainly interesting. I really wanted to see if I could find people who were like just reading at the time of release. Like that's definitely a very small audience, I'm sure. But I'm super curious. And I wasn't able to find interviews either. But with everything I've seen, I think it all kind of indicates that the extra chapter was specifically written for the volume release. It was put at the end of volume 3, right at the end, so that would make sense. And the 4 panel mini comics that were the extra phase in volume 2. Yeah. Those if those are extra, right? That indicates that they were, and all those comics are written for the volumes. So if this was also called extra, I think it makes sense that this was written after the fact, after the story had already completed.
Interesting. Okay. We may be able to look into this further and contact the individual who made this, because it seems like their Discord is linked in the top.
Ooh, okay.
we could have a little look at that. Anyway, yeah, no, that's fascinating. I mean, I didn't quite clock that, because I was about to say, it's interesting that, my first time read through, I didn't realize, because I thought the captain in the final 2 chapters was actually, for some reason, I thought it was Colonel Sanders, but because it said that he likes writing, which is like the same as Colonel Sanders, who's a novelist or something, but it doesn't make sense of like why he would be here. But it could just be like a, one of those Planetest things where it doesn't quite make sense or whatever. But then it turns out he's in this chapter, which I didn't quite clock either.
Whoa, he's in this chapter?
Yeah. He's just like one of the background characters, because he's one of his crew member on the ship. He's the guy with glasses in it. So I didn't clock this, but yeah, so like he's the one who asks, what gives you love the tigers, in one of them.
Yeah, hold on. It's right here. Where's this?
Yeah.
I don't. Oh! You're saying the captain of on the Von Braun.
Yes. Sorry,
I thought you said Colonel Sanders was here.
No.
What?
Yeah, no. Sorry.
My bad. I didn't notice that though. That's cool. I will say I think there's one. Okay, you know what? No, this isn't my favorite color page, but I really like this color page either way. Of him throwing the baseball.
Yeah, I mean, this color pages are. I wish they made a return, but just somehow it's just it's so good.
It's really, really good. I really like it. But okay, so for the actual chapter, stepping out of the meta stuff. So this is back in 2050. This is a young Goro on Mars. So this is really interesting because this is essentially like Jupiter is like their new Mars in like for Hachi current time, but like Mars was the next big step for them, and now it's kind of funny how it's kind of like an afterthought for like Hachi in we're like in the present of the story.
Yeah. No. And it kind of also talks about this a bit later with like going to Saturn afterwards as well, and that kind of links to a few other thematic things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love like the title. This is like Red Planet, White Ball, and yeah, I don't know. There's just a couple of interesting tidbits in here. I don't really find like a greater depth in here. Maybe
really
with Goro's
I have
chapters.
A lot to say about this chapter.
Okay, good.
Cool. I guess I could just start going off about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. We do often go kind of page by page, but there's there's a couple of things that I guess we can go through. But if you want to lead the way on this chapter, then go right at it.
Sure. Okay. Well, I guess overall, this chapter, I really liked it, and it's kind of set up around putting us in Goro's position the moment Hachi is born. So this is while Haruko is pregnant with Hachi. This is his first kid, and yeah. So we start off with more multiculturalism, and I think the more I read, the more I realize how important multiculturalism is to this story. Like, there's just so much of it. And at first, I thought it was just kind of a, just a Yukimura thing. He just likes to show knowledge of multiple cultures. He likes to embrace multiple cultures. So I thought it was just kind of like a little taste of his personality in a way, but it really is important to the overall message and the themes of the story. I mean, when you see Planetes written out, I believe in most like promotional material for Planetes, especially the anime, it's written out in Cyrillic. It's not written out in like kanji or anything. It's in Cyrillic, and I think I read somewhere that it means wanderers actually, but not really important.
With what is written in Cyrillic? Sorry.
The name Planetes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's written in Russian. Yeah, well, Cyrillic. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just got transfixed because Goro's thing has Goro only. His space suit. Goro only, and they've got numbers on the other ones. But yeah, no, but precisely like it's great that like they embrace the multiculturalism and they kind of add it in there. They're talking about one of the what is it so Islam, they've got the 5 pillars of Islam, and I think his thing is pronounced salat, which is or one of them is basically praying 5 times a day towards Mecca, and it's just there's something about it, like the poignancy of this, like how shows that this is something that someone's doing, and in a way we're opening on this kind of more, I guess, religious connotation, and we end on another religious connotation connection, but how he's still prays in the direction of Earth, and there's like, I don't know, there's something about how he's praying and pointing in that direction that makes it feel so much more grand, and there's something there that I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's like it's more than, say, if you just show like a Christian praying and they're like in a circle together.
Yeah, it has to do with direction and distance.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fascinating.
So yeah, like you said, we're introduced to this Muslim man named Ismail, and he's praying towards Mecca. And the really important part of this here is when Goro says he says Mecca is about as far away as it could possibly be right now, isn't it? And he responds, no, it's not far away at all. And that's really like the whole point of this chapter. It's that there are some things that with distance can degrade. There are some things that cannot survive distance, and that distance will factor against it. But when it comes to the real important things, love, and I would say his religion is a form of love, and that's why Mecca isn't so far away. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and it's that connection. It's kind of like, there's a close connection. There's a devout connection there. I think it's kind of talked about later on. It's kind of joked about how, oh, you're away for so long, aren't you going to cheat on your wife or something? Or like, it's almost like devotion and love, as you say, that like aids in almost like a weird like supernatural connection. And I love how Yukimura, and this is in another chapter later on, he likes to kind of play with the supernatural. In this sense, it's a bit more, I guess, ethereal, more less tongue-in-cheek. He does it in a more jovial way later on in this volume, but here he kind of he talks about it in a much more spiritual way, where it's a bit more nebulous and a bit more ineffable, like you can't describe it, but it's still very still there, which is quite nice.
Yeah, so we go on to this call with it's Goro having a call with Haruko, but it's kind of not a call. It's so I didn't notice this on my first read. I just thought the dialogue was structured a bit weirdly, but when I came back, I realized this is essentially they're on Mars. This is the farthest humanity has ever been out into space at this time, so the technology isn't able to have like a back and forth conversation like that. So it's more like they're sending video messages. So she sends a long video message about her just talking, and then he sends another message to try to in response to her. And I think it's a great choice to show one how the tech was just different when Goro was younger. It does like age the I guess it shows like that tech has changed a lot and advanced even more since this point, even though it's like far ahead, of course, from our perspective. But it also heightens that feeling of distance. The choice to make it so make conversation this like indirect and difficult. It heightens that feeling of like how far Haruko actually is, and that again, that feeling of distance is like everything this chapter is about.
So I totally agree with you there. Apart from, I don't think it's technology that's bad. I think it's just because they're so much further away that the speed of light takes 3 minutes to get from Mars to the Earth.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
So their communication is just limited in general. While like so far,
That's a good point. Yeah, I guess it probably couldn't get better.
They've been like from the moon or whatever max, right?
True. Very good point.
It takes a couple of seconds delay as opposed to 3 minutes to send information.
Yeah,
I do think that what you do say, like their spacesuits are different. This TV does also look different. Like I guess the UI looks a bit different to Calder's wife in the earlier chapters. So you are correct that technology has changed.
The spacesuits is an interesting one actually, because these suits look exactly. I remember the chapter where we have the guy, the No chapter, the veteran like astronaut guy who walks out, and they say he's in an older suit. I think these are those kinds of suits.
Yeah. And I mean, I love like this manga does feel like old. It doesn't feel like futuristic in its vision, in its technology. And I don't know why, but like lots of the metal feels kind of, it's not super sleek. You know, it's a bit more grungy, a bit more rusty, a bit more, I guess, durable feeling. And that kind of gives it a more old fashioned feel in a way.
Yeah.
And I don't like it, but it doesn't aid to this like a sense of this is the future of the world, which I think Planetes actually it's to his benefit. It's like
I think so too.
It kind of adds like we're only just slightly ahead in the future. Humans are the exact same. You know, we've not changed, and so maybe in terms of like I guess traditional sci-fi, maybe it's not quite as well realized and the technology isn't quite as well explored, and maybe it's a bit too for the timeline we'd be way ahead in technology than we are actually now because they're still like using a few things like for example like in the last chapter like the recording device is kind of like a camcorder that Hachi is using. But that feels like trying to, it's not really predicting the future correctly because it's like it's still quite a chunky piece of equipment. It's just got a kind of cool kind of techie looking lens on it or whatever. But so maybe from like that traditional sci-fi route, it's not quite as good or well established in the world. But in like a I guess more regular story way, I really really enjoy this like style of just feeling very similar but just slightly different. Even if the dates maybe not be like super lined up or something.
I feel like it gives a almost nostalgic feel to it.
Yes.
That I almost feel like is the point. Now, it's actually when I was going down the rabbit hole of Planetes trying to figure out the whole extra phase thing, I did see. I didn't look at the reference. So I don't know if this is true or not, but it was written somewhere in some Wikipedia. It wasn't Wikipedia. It was like some fan wiki that like Yukimura said in an interview that he didn't really go and like in-depth do research on the technology and where the technology is going because he didn't want to try to make these like big predictions about the future. He didn't want to make like these like slick futuristic tech. So I think it is intentional. Like this isn't Yukimura saying this is what I think the future technology is going to be like. I think he just wants it to feel familiar and realizable to people who are reading this in like 1999.
Interesting, yeah. Huh. Yeah, no, that is. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
Cool. But yeah. I guess to finish up with this conversation they're having, so he's sending his message back, and he's going up with this like extensive list of like questions and just thoughtful concerns for Haruko. And again, I think the fact that he's just keeps saying so much and not getting anything back, it again just kind of amplifies this feeling of distance and the kind of disconnect that comes from it. And it like strengthens the feeling that like communication is difficult, and maintaining the conversation and relationships can be difficult. But at the same time, the way he talks to her here, like all the concerns he has, everything he's thinking about, it shows that like what's still there is the connection between them. Even though like that, all the difficulties of this distance, there is so much love there in all the things that he's saying. And that's what I took away most from this. It drives home the feeling of distance, but it feels like the love again just isn't impacted by it.
Yeah, and I think now reading this again is amazing. It's taken me a third time to go through this and discuss with you, but I feel like this really sets up. Like, I know this is at the end of the last one, and how we're reading it is maybe not in like release order, but this really helps aid the final like couple of pages of explaining Hachi's final message, because there's a big deal made by Goro here that watching the baseball, even if it's only 3.5 minutes behind when it actually happens, it just isn't the same to him. And it's a weird like pedantic point, and you're like, I guess that isn't the same. Why, like, he's normally such a big fan of the Tigers and they just won the biggest thing ever. Why isn't he more happy? And then it kind of gets, links to the end of this chapter as well, because they're all playing baseball together, and that almost matters more in a way, that they're playing baseball together, and it may not be the highest level of baseball, maybe not as high stakes or interesting narratives behind it, but they're playing it live for themselves right now.
Yep.
And that's almost what gives him that connection to his child.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
The quote he says when he's talking about the baseball game, he says, "It feels like I already missed it." Super duper important. I'm sure you know why it's going to be important. We'll get to that in a second. But I guess going off of the baseball game real quick, there's this one moment that I realized on my second way through is kind of funny. They're talking about how Haruko's pregnant and stuff, and how, like, Goro isn't there and stuff. And he says, my wife's the one doing all the work. And then on the next page, you have them pushing the vehicle, and they're yelling, push! They're yelling, push! Just like, giving birth. It seems like that was very intentional. Yeah. And, like, the language continues to feel intentional. Obviously, this is Japanese translated to English, so a lot of this part of it may not really be intentional. But I noticed one of the astronauts says, like, "Oh, this storm is due tomorrow." Like a baby is due. Yeah. And of course, like, that storm brewing is, like, lining up with hachi and all that. It feels like it has to be intentional, but I have to wonder how that crosses the translation gap.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's also funny because, like, the monologue feels so Goro as well. It's like, Mars, Pluto, she'll shoot him out no matter where I am. Like, it's just like, very, like, almost crass way of like, she'll do it. Like, very fun of Goro thing. But yeah, I love that, like, connection there with, like, and maybe that would be, like, way more obvious if they, like, had, like, quite a quiet moment. It's like, she's doing all the work. Push, kind of like, it's almost like Thorfinn and Einar trying to move logs. Kind of thing. But yeah, and it's also funny, like, no, is it here or is it somewhere else? Like, they remark that, like, Goro, or maybe it's Hachi, the only one that's married or has a child or something.
Oh, it's on page 181, top left.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's like, like, they don't quite relate to him in a way. So it's just an interesting kind of, like, not dichotomy, just like a little like notice, like these astronauts aren't maybe as tied home as some other, and Goro's unique because he still has connections back home, at least with his family. But we also have Ishmael, who's connected to Mecca and his religion. So
So, yeah, Goro finds out that Haruko's gone into labor 2 weeks early, which has put her in intensive care. So, like, there's a risk there to this birth. And he's dealing with this, like, anxiety over this by, like, playing baseball. He's throwing it alone, and then with Ismail, and then, then they start playing, like, as a whole group. But then, while Goro is at bat, he's talking about how, oh, no, hold on. Okay, before this, when he's just playing with Ismail first, he comments about how Haruko saved his life. Saved his life. Without her, he would probably be a corpse floating in some secluded corner of space right now. This just, like, perfectly lines up with Hachi and Tanabe, how Hachi wanted to go off alone into space, and Tanabe was the one to ground him, and her love kind of disillusioned him from that. And she's kind of like his anchor. And we see that Haruko is essentially the same for Goro. And then while they're playing baseball, he goes a bit more detail. He starts saying, like, when he was younger, he just wanted to get to Mars no matter what, and didn't care if he died getting there or from being there. But that changed with Haruko. Again, just like Hachi, wanted to go to Jupiter, happy to die in the process, fighting for his dream. And then Tanabe changes that feeling for him, and love kind of transforms that.
Yeah. And one thing I could only think about this is, like, I'm not sure if they have any pictures on the moon of, like, people playing catch, but I wonder how the ball would move in that lower gravity environment.
Yeah, I wonder that too.
Just, like, it could be quite, like, I think these kind of scenes are, like, always very, like, calming to listen to dialogue with, and, you know, it's very natural. Like, they're, like, the person with the ball is throwing, you know, and then it's kind of like they're throwing a ball as they're kind of throwing this conversation back between each other, kind of in a way. It's like a interesting thing. But it's like Ishmael is also, like, open to understanding someone else's, like, culture in a way. Like he doesn't understand why it's considered fun, and he wants to find out real baseball in a way.
Yeah.
And so they put him up. They play some baseball together. And it's Martians versus Aries.
Oh yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
But so yeah, when Goro's up at bat, I think it's funny that his story gets cut off and he just never continues it. But I feel like we've seen Hachi's story, we know how it ends. It's kind of like enough to fill in the blanks based on what we've seen from Hachi. They really are kind of the same. But so he goes and he's about to hit the home run, and then he can feel, like, the moment that Hachi is born. And I adore this so much because we have the baseball game from before to compare to this. How he said it's like takes 3 minutes for the signal to get here. It feels like I already missed it. But for something like this, for the birth of his first child, his son, he feels it the moment it happens, because the distance does not matter for love, for what's really important. And he says later that he got the actual signal, the message that says that like Hachi was born. He gets that signal like 20 minutes later, but he already knew in that moment that it had happened. He's looking up and he says, "I have a son. I can feel it now. I'll always have to come back home."
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so good. Like, I do feel like I judge Goro a bit for not being present at the birth of his first child. That pretty much is Goro's character from what we know of him. That's very in line with what I would expect from him. But it's heartwarming just to see that after all this time saying that he doesn't need to be there and that the child will just be born either way, it's his love that prevents him from missing that moment. And it doesn't feel like it happened without him, because he was there because of these feelings.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. I'm just going to grab a Vinland Saga volume because I do want to have a look at something real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay.
So, what I want to know is has Yukimura had his first kid when he's writing this?
I want to know that too. That is exactly what I
So he
wanted to end this
in
chapter
one of the
with.
volumes, I remember, he lists the ages of the kid, and we can see when the volume came out, and if this is like if this, because I think it's become even more apparent later on, as Hachi's design becomes more and more like a caricature of Yukimura over time.
Yep.
You know, like yeah, but
Here, while you're looking for that, I'll just finish this point off.
Please do.
Because this plays exactly into what Ismail was saying about Mecca not being far at all. It has that religious significance to him, and he has that connection that will always keep it close to him, no matter where he is, no matter how far the distance is. It's that genuine connection, that genuine love. And yeah, and that's that just like blew me away. I didn't really pick up on that the first read. This is again a just perfect example of why it's so much better on the second read. Just looking at everything else that happens this chapter and just knowing that moment, distance doesn't matter at all. It's just so beautifully written. It is really incredible. And I like the little touch at the end too that Hachi was named after this baseball team winning their 8th series.
Yeah, because his wife said, "Oh, it can't be 7 because you're number 6, and that's like so boring." He's like, "All right, it's gonna be number 8 then."
What was it like? Ichi ni sanshi go roku. Yeah, I forget. They say it during that conversation. Rokuro. You can't name him Rokuro, and he goes for Hachirota.
To be fair, Hachi's the only number I actually know for whatever reason in Japanese. I don't know any of the others, but so it's a good number.
I know. Well, I know 1 through 10 because I did karate, but there's also in One Piece, Sanji is like the 3rd child, so he's named Sanji, and all of his siblings are named after all the numbers. It's funny. One Piece is weird. Which the fact that he's named Sanji because of that is like one of the like insane reveals of late One Piece, but it doesn't even matter to know that because it doesn't even feel like a huge thing without the context. Doesn't even matter. Not related to Planetes. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this chapter.
All right.
What do you got?
I found it. So, we don't know when this chapter was added, but Planetes ended in the 36th week, so I guess August of... No. It ended in February of 2004, according to the hiatus chart. And the afterword said his first son was born in 2006. The labor itself was hard, but raising our child is even harder for my wife. Breastfeeding him, changing his diapers, switching him to solid foods, taking him on walks, comforting him in the middle of the night. All Vikings started as babies, of course, and the same painstaking care must have been taken to raise them into adults. And yet, once they were adults, they rushed to their death, killing each other and causing misery. I bet those Viking mothers were so exasperated. But even knowing what would eventually happen, they still raised their sons. Mothers are so great, men are so stupid. The most classic Yukimura quote. That's in the end of book 2 for Vinland Saga English. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This
so
is
it
crazy.
doesn't quite line up with our theory, but I don't know when this one came out.
The actual volume release was January 24th, 2003. So that means this extra chapter was written before at the very least it was written before the series ended. It looks like a year before.
Yeah, but this may be just additional stuff like English one as well or something. I don't quite know because
I was just looking on the Wikipedia list of Planetes chapters.
Oh, yeah.
It says because this is at the end of Volume 3 and Japanese Volume 3 released January 24th, 2003.
Oh yes, you're correct. So end of.
So this is 3 years before he has his first child.
But the English North American release, interestingly, was 2004.
Yeah, it says June 1st here.
And an extra phase, okay, so extra phase was here. Does it say when the extra phase was added? No.
I think it's implied to have been part of the original Japanese Volume 3.
Yeah, okay. Because for some reason I thought this was added after the end of the manga. All right.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought the volumes were put together after it ended, but I guess they were being put together during serialization. I didn't even realize that. Wow. The fact that he has these feelings about fatherhood before his first child is even born is shocking to me. Like, his fascination with fatherhood and parenthood in general is just, like, definitely a huge part of his identity as a mangaka. The way he writes parent characters, like, you know, like Thor's, and like Goro here, it's definitely very important to him, and he sees having a child as like a pivotal moment where you change for the better in a lot of ways. And and that makes me just wonder, where did this extra phase come from in his heart before that first kid? Because it definitely reads like he
started Vinland before he had his first child. It's kind of crazy to think about. Vinland Saga.
Yeah.
Hiatus shot. He may have written Thor's death before.
That's insane.
Before. Oh, come on. I mean, I'm the one who made this. Well, updated. I just took. It was like at the end of the Baltic Sea War. All right, so. So he said 2006. So, yeah. In 2005, he ended. That was the end of the second volume, which ends with Thor's death, chapter 16, I think. So Thor's died before he even had his first child, which is pretty crazy. So he's had I don't know. He's always been a very introspective guy, and that's a good thing to like keep in mind. Like how, you know.
Wow. Yeah, I wonder if Goro was then maybe framed after his own father then?
I thought so. I think in the end, like, that was what I was beginning to wonder.
Yeah, because he definitely makes hachi himself by the end.
Yeah, without doubt. yeah.
So maybe
I think he was like hachi way before that. Like, I think he wrote this part of Planetes when he's like, I don't know. We don't know when he got married to his wife, but I feel like it was happening probably at the same time or something. I feel like that was very personal as he was going through it. So,
yeah,
to me that made sense.
Wow, that's just so shocking. I would love to know where this comes from for him, but I imagine then his father telling him about like how the moment he was born changed him. You know. Must have inspired, like, writing Thor's that way, writing Goro this way. Wow. Because I when I read this chapter, I was convinced that, like, you know, after Planetes ended or something, that's when he had his kid, and then he wrote this chapter in hindsight, you know, after the story had already ended. But no, this was 2003. That's crazy.
That is kind of nuts, isn't it?
Wow. Okay. We didn't think we'd have a lot to talk about in this chapter, but it's a good one. That was just a really good one.
We lie when we say we don't have enough to talk about, because we'll find ways to talk about it for longer.
All right, let's start on actual volume 4 then, with chapter 17. Now, this one to me feels like the odd one out. This feels like, you know, when I read the first volume, read chapter 3 with Fee, I was like, this one feels odd. Feels like it doesn't fit as well. It doesn't feel like it has a lot going on thematically. This one feels like that. It feels like, to me, it feels like the real purpose of this chapter is to give us some time of Tanabe being Tanabe without Hachi's involvement. I feel like a lot of the Tanabe moments we have gotten up until now are very much like based on her experiences with Hachi and talking with Hachi and teaching Hachi. So I like that we kind of get a bit of her being herself after they've already gotten married and now he's off on the mission. And also just to kind of remind us of these characters, because they are important to hachi, and they need to be important to us as readers for the ending to really hit. So this just kind of feels like, I don't want to say filler, but it feels like it's just sort of giving us more time with these characters.
Yeah, it does feel a bit more slice of lifey. I do think this character in of itself does actually add an interesting thematic layer on top. And I guess we can kind of go through it bit by bit, but so we kind of start off, and the concept of this chapter is that this person is, I mean, it's not really outright confirmed, but we're kind of led to believe that he is an alien of some sort that's been transformed into a human body, and he's trying to learn human customs and culture. And it's like the almost typical like, oh, I don't understand stuff, and that gets me into trouble. And and it's done in a quite, I guess, Japanese anime way, where like the first thing he does is kind of like something a bit perverted or something like that, and that's not generally like Yukimura's style with stuff. So like opens a chapter where like he's been told by another crewmate, which and this feels more natural to me later on how it's explained why he's doing it. But like basically he tries to like touch the breasts of like a co-worker, because basically one of the other mates was like messing with him. It's like, oh, this is what you do to women, and like to tell you, to show that you like them or whatever. Which
it's
is
like a greeting. He said,
which is true, but like you need to like boundaries need to be. You need a That's not a first meeting thing. That's when you're way more intimate with them, I guess. So it's and that's kind of like a bit of a gimmick, not a gimmick, but it's kind of one of those like tropey things where like, but it's done in such a way like, to me it reminds me why I like Yukimura, because there's a sorrow to him. It's not I'm like, oh, this is so funny. Isn't it wacky that he's like, and it doesn't like have any like clear shots of him like actually grabbing it. It's him being reprimanded for it. It's not like trying to like be necessarily sexually suggestive, or like the intentions of this feel way more pure, even if the humor feels a bit tropish.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this was something I always appreciate with Yukimura, and it's like there's a sadness that like you open up in the first place. Like, it's hard to make friends, and something about and I think what works so well with Plantes is like the use of space, and gazing off into space makes everything feel so much more profound.
Yeah.
It's like a weird aesthetic choice where you're like, wow, this is so much deeper because they're gazing off into the abyss of space, which is something that helps. But anyway, it's just, this is, as you say, it's a bit more slice of lifey, but I don't know how page by page we want to go through this, but I'll get to my overall point kind of quickly. And I think what you find at the end here is that we've kind of covered this theme of like trying to be connected with people, trying to, no matter how far away you are still connected with other humans, and love is still there. And like, as we kind of talk about the last chapter, even if you're on Mars playing baseball, you can still have that connection. That's what makes things special. Mm-hmm. This person kind of, there's a bit of basically he's an alien that has lost his connection, and he's trying to establish connection again, but in a completely different means. Because as an alien race, they talk about how they have like an organ to have telepathy, where they can perfectly understand each other's thoughts. They don't need to use language, which is sometimes easily misunderstood or messy, where things kind of it's not perfect. And he said like initially he was like terrorizing people and playing loads of pranks on them, and it kind of links back in a way to in a bit of a meta way. Is like, oh, this is how like all those
crop circles,
crop circles and all this.
It's all him. It's all the Baron.
Yeah, but he kind of talks about like he's trying to make connections with the humans again. He's trying like with humans now. Like he wants to make connections with someone, and it's an imperfect way. And it's almost like a metaphor, like, oh, I used to look down on humans for not being as being stupid, like a less intelligent life form, because they don't have this organ to communicate.
Yeah.
In a way, is how we look upon animals. We say, oh, animals can't use language, okay, or like even animals that do use language, they either mimic us or they're like, it's like I was watching like a documentary of like orca whales, and they actually have language, and they have languages in different pods, and they do it through clicks. And it's a different noise, it sounds different, but they do communicate meaning in some sort of language that does change from orca pod to orca pod. And anyway, it's a fascinating thing, but we do kind of look down on animals because they're not able to like chat with us about random manga they've read, you know, or something like that. Yeah. And so anyway, it's like a similar thing where, but in a way that's like almost talks about the beauty of humanity in a way. Is like there is a messiness to our
Yep.
to our communication, and that's like part of the fun. And you got Tanabe being Tanabe and being unique and being indiscriminate with her friendship, being indiscriminate with her love, being very naive in a way, but very open.
Exactly.
And I think this links to Tanabe later on, and this links into Willowbold and Vinland Saga, like this indiscriminate love that Tanabe has, which I think we'll talk about again. But I think this is what this chapter kind of gets at. I mean, there may be a few deeper moments, and I'm not sure if that kind of sparks any thoughts in you, but it is a slice of life, but it has a nicer, more touching core. For sure. I will say, like, Hordaland in space, whatever her name is, Roxy or whatever.
Roxy, yep.
She's just Hordaland from Vinland Saga. I really like how they had the 4-page panel at the end of, like, and in the middle of the volume where, like, his hair's down and she thinks he's kind of like, he's, like, really handsome and stuff. And
yeah.
I ship it. I'm just like, I want to see more of this.
It was cute, yeah.
And you know what? If it's in the anime and, like, they made this, I can see this character being cut, but, like, it'd be kind of cute to see more, you know. I don't know, it's just like fun, like it's just fun dialogue, like it does kind of commentate on this, like there's this guy that kind of like is trying to hit on Roxy, and then like later on she's shown that he's like proposing to like a lady who's come back from a long way away, like does commentate on a like almost the sleaziness of a lot of the male cohorts in a way, which is and kind of disregards them, and I don't know, like, but then also there's like anyway it's kind of like Yukimura just being a bit of that. The thing is, because I'm not alive, like, well, I'm not. Well, I am alive in the 2000s, but I'm not like reading this stuff. I don't know if this is like a unique cultural shift for manga at the time, or like if it's kind of the same how it was, but like the popular stuff tends to be a bit more degenerative or whatever. But like, I don't know. There's just a lot of really cute dialogue because you have this whole thing throughout the chapter of like. Tanabe wanted to be calling Miss Hoshino, and then he finally gets called Mrs. Hoshino by what is his face? Baron? The Baron?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, do they ever say a different name? Because I heard them say the Baron as like a nickname. It's what people just call him. I don't think we've given an actual name. If you can't remember it, I don't remember it either. No. So we're just gonna call him the Baron.
And then Roxy has the Canute laugh. Which she just
I was gonna comment on that too.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's like a super fun, like I you know, you kind of talk about how it's like that, maybe that like chapter 3 in a way, and I think this is a great like testament to how Yukimura has evolved his one-off chapters in a way that's like, oh, this is like got a bit of depth to it, but it's also super fun, and his tempo and it's like his clarity in writing is so like is really fun and just really enjoyable, and I just really awesome. I actually really enjoyed this chapter.
I think I didn't convey it right. I definitely loved this chapter. I liked reading it.
Yeah, for sure.
I just felt like it did feel like a bit of a black sheep. Like it didn't really fit. Because I feel like all the other chapters in this group that we're reading and talking about today is just all of them are just extremely profound, and this one is intended to be. It's not trying to be like those chapters, and I like what it's trying to do for sure.
And it does introduce characters, right? Like, and this is near the end of the manga. They used, the Baron's used in one kind of plot point.
He does show up in the Fee arc, right?
In the Fee arc, yeah. But like apart from that, it's like, you know, it feels a bit late to be introducing characters or whatever. But anyways, it's interesting. I really want to do like a big fan art of like all Yukimura's like art characters in the end or somehow.
Oh, I'd love that.
Like I can imagine like. Hild and Fee smoking, or like Tanabe and Gudrid hanging out, Thorfinn, like, you know, you just compare them off into their twos, like Goro and Askeladd, Thors and Yuri, you know, like they kind of do pair together in a nice way. I'm not sure who's Aina.
He doesn't really have a best friend. I feel like Yuri kind of fit that for at least a little bit.
Yeah, in a way,
Yeah, Einar's gotta be what's her name, Sally, because she's from the UK, right? She's from England.
Exactly. Yeah. And then
there we go.
And Thorfinn and Einar almost have sex, exactly right. Oh, it's all coming together, guys.
It all comes together.
But yeah. And then like Lockhart could be kind of like Floki in a way. The Lockhart's probably a much better character.
I got so much to say about Lockhart. I got so much to say about that man.
Yeah, he's like used minimally, but then like there's I'm very interested.
Yeah, yeah, I don't want to get too ahead of it because I really want to save him for when he comes in.
Speaking actually of Lockhart, he's in the next chapter.
Yeah,
I think we can move on. I know we like to go.
No, I actually do have quite a bit to say about this chapter. I have some. I do.
Baron one.
17. Yeah. I do have some stuff I wanted to say.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Sorry.
One thing that stood out to me a lot. I think this is after JoJo's part 4 had started, and I know everybody always says, "Oh, is that a JoJo reference?" I do think this guy's a JoJo reference. The Pompadour, sure, whatever. But there's a character in part 4 who's introduced and is exactly like this. Is this character who genuinely claims to be an alien. You never figure out if he's an actual alien or not. But he's just odd. I do think it's a reference to him.
Does he also have like the sleeveless shirt? Because
no,
the Baron is ripped, man. He's actually jacked. Like this guy has got some big old shoulders on him. So.
But yeah. Let's see. There's a couple things. I feel like. What I was talking about earlier about how this is really nice characterization for Tanabe in the context of not having hachi. It really is. I feel like the whole chapter is just about being genuine and how when you are genuine, you can feel when other people are being genuine. She doesn't need to question if the Baron's telling the truth or not because he seems like a genuine guy. So she chooses to just believe him. Yeah. And everyone else thinks he's full of shit because they think about it and you're like, this is ridiculous. But like, she's just so genuine about it because you have the guy saying like, oh yeah, he says he's like a reptilian or something, and she's like, oh, does he have like scales, or something like that? Does he have like antennae? And they're like, what are you talking about? This guy's not an alien, but she's like so genuine about it, and she's just so receptive to people who are strange or different and just doesn't judge without understanding them first. And like you said before, it makes her come off as sort of ignorant, gullible, inexperienced, but also it shows why it's better to be an entirely genuine person like she is, because you can tell when somebody is being genuine back with you. And it's a step above being gullible without kind of stepping into the negative side of it where you just don't believe anybody. And I just really love that characterization of her. And it really plays in again with the fee stuff. How like Yuri says a lot about how like he can't tell if she's like immature or extremely mature. She's just like somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And this is another example of her like to like at first glance you might think that this is super immature of her and she just doesn't understand how it works, but really she just has such a genuine understanding of people that she, to others who are sort of in the middle, she seems crazy, seems inexperienced. Mm-hmm. And super interesting. I
wonder if this is what Yukimura's wife, if Mrs. Yukimura is like this. I do wonder, because we both have kind of hinted that we think Yukimura is very much like Hachi, so I wonder if this is like something about that. Yeah,
I think for sure. There's one funny moment in here. There's actually a lot of funny moments in here.
There's lots of really funny moments.
I love the little pieces of dialogue. I like how when the Baron says like, yeah, I haven't received verbal confirmation from anyone that I'm a friend, and he just stares at Fee. And Fee's like, oh god, he's staring at me.
Yeah. But the thing
Tanabe's like, no, we are.
He's not staring at her because he's expecting anything. He's just staring at her because he just stares, which is like even better. It's like she like big brains it, but he's actually not that big braining it, So yeah, it's quite funny. And it's like, and then Fee kind of talks about it, it's like, hey, we didn't have verbal confirmation about that we were agreeing on this, that all of us are his friends. It's quite funny, yeah.
But it's funny when another funny moment when Roxy is reintroduced, like Tanabe is trying to introduce the Baron to her, not realizing what happened, and then when he tells her about it, there's a panel of somebody milking a cow, touching the udders. It's so silly. It's so silly.
And it has like the UFO flying. It's like you can kind of also hear like the sound effect that they have in the anime.
Yep.
Kind of thing.
But what I thought was interesting here, when they're at the bar, he tells her like, yeah, the what's his name? Bernini? That's a weird name. But he's like, yeah, he told me that he touched women's breasts for greetings. And Tanabe just entirely genuinely is like, that's weird. He never touched mine.
Yeah, he's like, it's like Dumber and Dumber 2. It's like, oh, it's so good. Yeah, no, it is very funny. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's just two like kind of slightly more unrealistic characters like bouncing off of each other. But then like there's like a funny like I also love like the gesture of like Roxy putting her hand on Fee's shoulder and be like on Tanabe's shoulder and be like, Tanabe, I have to tell you the truth. I'm actually a spy that works for the FBI. But they don't really know that I'm really from Cyrus and I have psychic powers, the access teleportation device that can crank out 100,000 horsepower. But I tell you, it's all true. Anyway, like, you know, it's just one of those funny things where it's like...
I actually thought this moment had... it's interesting, the distinction for Tanabe, how Tanabe reacts, because I feel like this is what shows, like, no, she's not just flat out gullible, because, like, she can just tell when people are being genuine with her. She knows Roxy's not being genuine with her here, but she feels that the Baron is being genuine, so she's able to just believe him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like how, while they're waiting for her, he talks, the Baron's talking about, like, hoping she comes, and he has a little line here where he says, like, I did a really rude thing to Roxy. I have to apologize to her. It's not even about, like, you know, making the secret to making friends anymore. It's about, like, I now genuinely understand the problem, and I want to apologize because I know what I did was wrong. And I like how that's just like his growth throughout this chapter. He's learned, Tanabe's teaching him how to be genuine by being genuine with him. Mm-hmm. And it's starting to transform him, and that kind of lines up perfectly with when, like you said, he calls her Mrs. Hoshino, like she's been asking everybody this chapter to do, but nobody's been really listening to her, but he's listened and understood. And I really just love that. And like the moment of her like saying like he has an honest face, I really love. It's really sweet. And let's see. Yeah, like, I had in my notes too, the Canute laugh, exactly what came to my mind.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so good.
Should we call it the Roxy laugh and Canute's just ripping
True, Canute stole that one. She kind of looks like him.
Roxy laugh. But yeah.
But I guess I have a little bit more than I'm ready for 18, but
sounds good.
You kind of touched on this a little bit too, with his like punishment or whatever. He's essentially somebody who was not able to understand people until he was literally put into their shoes. He was literally forced to step into the shoes of a human and have into the body of a human, forced to understand them that way. But contrast this with Tanabe, who puts herself in other people's shoes willingly every time she talks to them, just by being genuine and trying to understand. And even when they are somebody who's as alien to her as the Baron is. And I love that. It's very Vinland Saga. Again, that like how important communication is and how important understanding each other is. And more and more as this volume goes on, it's very proto Vinland Saga. Like all those ideas, you could see them coming out. That's all I got. This is a nice chapter, nice moments, fun to read. Thematically, as a service to the whole series, it isn't as impactful as every other chapter in this volume, but it does what it's set out to do very well, which is just to talk about this idea and have good character moments to remind us why we like these characters, and and just kind of the importance of these characters. So, okay, actually, I had something I wanted to talk about, but I'll wait till after 18 to talk about this. Okay, yeah, I'm ready for 18.
Yeah, and we go for something that's quite light-hearted and slice of life. You do something way more dramatic.
Oh man,
as we're kind of reintroduced to Lockhart.
It is Locksmith.
Locksmith,
right?
sorry, Lockhart.
Yep.
I'm thinking of the Harry Potter character, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He's Professor Lockhart. He's the one that's in book 2, in Chamber of Secrets. Anyway, there's a quote at the beginning, and I actually didn't clock this until the second one. It's from the same book that's kind of referenced a lot in this chapter. It's done by the same author. So
Spring and Usher. Okay, yeah. I love this first poem. I think this is just great. I'll read it out in full.
Mm-hmm.
In this strange, vast, unimaginable universe, if you burn for what is right, you strive to make a better future for you and others and you and the whole universe. It is like a religion for us all to follow. And even if this burning seems to consume you, you and your soul's companion must completely and eternally travel as far as you can together, for that is what love is. It's so good in this colored page, in the physical. Get the physical volumes. It's so gorgeous. Oh my god. I tried to go online to look for scans because I wanted to save the picture, but there's no high quality scan, of course. But this page just looks absolutely gorgeous on the physical volume.
For some of that actually. I asked for one page and it wasn't actually in that page, but Vril did manage to access some stuff for me. So it's not quite as high quality, but I think if we up the contrast or saturation, you can get to look pretty similar because it does look a little washed out. But at least in the pictures he sent me. But yeah, it's hard to find this stuff online, so definitely get the actual volumes. Supports Yukimura, but also you get a better quality product.
So, do you have a interpretation of this this excerpt?
That you feel not like really actually. It's more. I didn't read into it a ton, honestly, which I probably should have, because it's there for a reason. But I kind of just clocked that. Oh, this is the same author as the book later, which is interesting tie-in.
Got it. I feel like this isn't as cryptic as the last one we had, which was the what was it? Black Flower's name, Saki no Haka, in volume 2. I don't think it goes as cryptic as that did. But very, very much like Vinland Saga. It is really it reminds me so much of what, Yukimura is about to me, and it feels like this is something that he's put here because it has inspired him a lot. Because it's like this idea that if you are somebody who just it's like a simplification of just like doing the right thing. If you always just try to do what is right and focus on what is right for everybody around you, for you, others, the universe, like that is the way to live. That is the religion for everyone to follow. It's like okay, to go Vinland Saga a bit, like Thorfinn's whole thing is very, very Christian-esque, very like loving others, not harming others, like very much like that Christian faith, but it's not religion. It is more so about just being the best person you can be, and a lot of what religion was created to do was to get people to be better, to control people, to make people not do bad things without
form together around an ideal, and so try and create more cohesion, which just kind of does touch upon was like you strive to make a better future for you and others and you and the whole universe. It's like a religion for us all to follow. It's like I guess with religions in a lot of ways, there's a moral imperative there. It's like we should be doing this because we want to improve the world we're in, and that's kind of like, yeah, it does like link to that Vinland thing where they have this goal, they have this ideal, they want to strive towards together. This ideal of having a land of peace with no violence and no slavery, and together we shall join behind this, and we shall build a community, and if it, this is a strange, vast, unimaginable universe. If you burn for what is right, you strive to make that future better. And even if this burning seems to consume you, you and your soul's companion must completely and eternally travel as far as you can to go together. And that's almost like, I think that's more directly with Planetes in a way, but also links to like Thorfinn and Gudrid, like your companion, but your companions in general, just striving as far as you can together. And it's interesting. It ends on this, for this is what love is. And then you kind of have this whole thing where like Willibald's shtick is kind of brought up by another priest in this, and trying to figure out what is love. And it kind of, it's like, as you said early on, it's this proto-Vinland Saga, and it's kind of dabbling in these areas, and it doesn't come upon as strong a conclusion in some ways as Vinland Saga, which makes it more interesting to chew upon.
It feels like a less alienating version of what Vinland tries to do, because Vinland decides to just go all out and go to the most extreme for this kind of ideology, whereas I feel like Planetes is definitely something that's a bit more digestible for the average person, like somebody who could feel like love, like find the importance of love. It's like not as crazy as Vinland Saga goes, and Vinland Saga almost becomes like too idealistic for some people. Yeah. It feels like this isn't really going that far, and I think that's to the story's benefit. Which I have more to say on that near the end. But for this poem, I feel like the part that felt like it didn't really fit to me was the you and your soul's companion. It didn't really feel like the companionship was a super important part of it to me. I don't know, because the way I was reading it was like, you burn for what is right, you try to do the right thing, the Vinland Saga first resort kind of thing. You're burning for it, and if that burning seems to consume you, that to me makes me think of like sometimes the first resort is the more difficult option. It's the real battle, to try to do good and do right by everybody in every moment, to love universally. That to me was what the consumes you is. It's you do something that may not be the best for you, but it's the best for the universe. It's best for everybody else. So you take that kind of sacrifice because that's the best thing to do for everyone. Very like, Thor sacrificing himself. It's very much that kind of idea, and that is what love is. It's that universal doing the best for everybody and not for the self. And that's why, again, the soul's companion part, I don't really see how it slots in as well, but I think that's because I'm thinking about it from the Vinland Saga perspective. Because Planetes really is a lot more about relationships with people and companionship and love between people, not love as much of like agape loving indiscriminately. I mean, it is about that, but it definitely focuses a bit more on the love between like two people in a relationship, rather than that universal love. And because we've talked about this when we talked about Volume 3 with Hachi and Tanabe and their growing relationship, and how we felt like it was handled very well compared to like Thorfinn and Gudrid, and how like we kind of skip that phase for them. It definitely feels like Planetes is more interested in that part of love than Vinland Saga is. And with that context, I feel like this fits a lot better, and with the context of the rest of this chapter. Unfortunately, I feel like I didn't really get the best concise interpretation of this poem before we started. So yeah, I'm pretty bummed out about that because I want to understand it better, but I feel like I get the gist of it. But like how it has to do with love between two people, that's the part I feel like I don't really see as well as the following the universal good, even if it's not to the benefit of you, even if it consumes you, going as far as you can together is what love is. And maybe your soul's companion is just people, it's not just one person. It's
maybe I think it's also it's like people who you can hold that dream with and you can do that dream with. Like that's an important part of it as well. It's like don't go alone with your goal. Like
that's a very good point.
It kind of leans into the religion, but also what Plan Test is about. You can have this goal of trying to, mind you, lots of the goals that have been depicted like this are very selfish, but like wanting to get that spaceship for yourself, wanting to go to Jupiter by yourself, wanting to go to Mars by yourself,
Yep. Very good point.
But you're not. Are you bringing the people along with you that care about you and want to do what is right? And this is an issue that Thorfinn, in some ways, does have, is that he does. At least he wants to repent of his sins by himself. He doesn't want to burden other people with his sins. That's why in the Baltic Sea War he does all this stuff by himself. He goes and runs away by himself. And if Hild wasn't so staunch in having to follow him, and he didn't feel like he owed her to follow him, like say if they were friends or something, she'd be on that boat too. It's not because she's good at fighting. It's because he doesn't have a right to tell her that she can't follow him. That's why he can't get rid of her. So it's this kind of thing. And I do wonder if Vinland Saga will kind of approach that again. Because I still think Thorfinn needs to recognize that he needs people, but maybe it's... I don't know where Vinland Saga is.
It feels like we kind of left that in Baltic Sea War.
Maybe. Yeah, it's one of those interesting things where it's like it's hard to always comment on the little bits until the thing's done.
True.
Which is nice because Plan Test is done and we can kind of...
I love that it's done.
It's nice.
But okay. I think actually a lot of it just kind of clicked a bit more about how this... It really is about to contrast Locksmith, the traveling as far as you can with people, and perfect. Okay,
and Locksmith leaves them behind. Like
exactly.
he allows them to die. He he literally leaves them behind, because he kind of treats them all as individuals trying to get as far as they can to Saturn or Jupiter or whatever. It's almost keep moving forward.
Tatakai.
Yeah, exactly. Fight.
But honestly, besides the fact that it seems like I didn't give that poem as much time as I wanted to, I think this might be my favorite chapter, at least in the whole volume it is. I don't know if it's my favorite in the whole series. I need to think about that more, but I really, really adore this chapter, especially the second time through.
Okay. Interesting.
So, right off the bat, this is a Locksmith chapter. He hasn't really felt like a relevant character like we expected him to be. I mean, you and I talked about, like, Volume 2. We were going to see, like, we're going to be going on the mission soon, and then we're going to see how Hachi has to deal with Locksmith. Hachi doesn't even know anything about this guy besides that, like, TV interview he did.
Yeah,
he knows.
They met when Locksmith was trying to find his dad that one time.
Yeah, and then he has, like occasional working with him when it comes to like training for the mission, but he's not even on the mission. The mission has launched already. He hit his dream already. Yeah, it's been 2 years since a year and a half. I think since
18 months.
Yeah, year and a half since the mission, since the ship launched successfully, and 2 years since the explosion of the engine on the moon. And that was like chapter 6? I don't remember, 6 or 7, somewhere around there, volume 2. But so now we get more context on him and how his life has changed since then and how he approaches this. And a lot of it is so based on the foundation set up in that introduction chapter for him. And now this chapter feels like it just adds so many layers to him that it completely recontextualizes him, and he kind of goes from a kind of flattish character who's albeit he was interesting, but he felt like he was a bit more flat to like one of the most like I don't know complex characters in the whole story, and I absolutely adore what Yukimura did with him here.
Cool. Well, I'm happy to hear because there were a few interesting moments where like, oh, that's an interesting reaction, but this didn't quite click with me in the way that it seems to have with you. So
okay,
lead us here, and I'll pick up on what you put down.
All right, cool. So I essentially like in the hindsight of having finished the story, this definitely feels like the purpose of it, just like the purpose of last chapter, I felt was to give us time with the other characters, the people that are close to Hachi, and explore some other ideas. That this one feels like it's trying to set up Locksmith for the finale, for his involvement in the last 2 chapters, and sort of because Hachi has grown a lot, and Hachi has gone from like somebody who seemed like he could go down the same path as Locksmith to somebody who's now a complete contradiction to what Locksmith believes. Very much a Thorfinn Canute kind of dynamic, and I have a lot to say about that when we actually get to the last chapter. But this is kind of the moment of giving him this depth. So we're showing him going to the memorial service for the victims of the engine explosion from 2 years ago, and he basically has taken accountability for it in that like interview, I guess, and he from that like chapter where he's introduced and where the explosion happened, he basically said like I'm sorry about this, but we're going to get so much data from this, so I hope you look forward to my future work or something like that. Very much just kind of like goal oriented, nothing else matters. And so now we have him here at the memorial service, and we know from his introduction that he doesn't really care what the public thinks of him. And so we know he's not here as a publicity stunt. He's not here to appear sympathetic to people. Because he doesn't care what people think about him. He's here because he wants to be. And he feels like he actually owes it to the victims. But, so he is so interesting because Hachi has grown to see the importance of love and accept love into his heart. And we have Locksmith, who's essentially a man who has left himself void of the need of love. The angry stares he gets here when he's walking at the memorial service, the egg that gets thrown at him, they don't get to him because he genuinely has no desire here to be liked by anyone, to feel love. What truly matters to him is what he sacrificed love for, which is his mission with the Von Braun that has already successfully launched. So it hasn't reached Jupiter yet, so you can't say he's kind of reached his dream yet, but he has no more work left to do for it. It kind of goes on without him now. But
yeah. I do like how you picked up on that. Like, he's chosen to do these things. Like, this is a memorial 2 years after he's been around. Like 2 years after the accident. You know, it's not like straight after the accident and he has to be there. He's there because he wants to, and then he goes to another. Like, he knows. Like, he clearly cares about this one scientist who's exceedingly great. You know, he goes to this one. You know, where there's less publicity, and it's at night and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, it's nice, smaller characterization, and there's lots of like, just great faces for him. You know,
yes,
just great little faces. You know, like his expression as someone throws the eggs to surprise, to then watching the egg, to then almost this like narrowing of the eyes, like, and like what does that mean? Does he think the guy's pathetic, or does he think he's pathetic, or does he does he feel like he deserves this and he's kind of just embracing the shot? Like, you know, all these things. There's like a way to read into this, which, you know, I love. I love when Yukimura does this. I love when manga does this. Just gives you stuff to chew on.
Yeah. The line he says here when he gets hit by the egg is what stuck with me throughout the rest of this chapter. It's this, do not acknowledge him. Because that's his entire... Like, it was funny to me at first, but it's like his entire philosophy, really. It's just... I won't acknowledge this. I won't acknowledge the hatred, and the only way to not acknowledge the hatred is to not acknowledge the need for love, and shut yourself out from it, and like you said before, again, like to show that he does actually genuinely care what he's done and wants to like pay his respects is the fact that he goes to the one graveyard where the head scientist Yamagata is buried alone, no public eye to watch him. He's there genuinely just to pay his respects. And what so interesting to me in the car, and I'll talk about a bit more why this was so interesting to me a bit later. But he tells his driver, who he seems to have a pretty decent connection with, he tells him, Yamagata was like brilliant head engineer and I killed him anyways. So he genuinely feels that he is responsible for those deaths. He does, like, unless for some reason he's lying here, which I feel like I'm more inclined to believe he's being genuine in this moment. He feels that responsibility. And then, we meet Yamagata's sister. I don't know if we got a name for her, so I'm just going to keep calling her Yamagata's sister unless we see something. But, so she's thinking about her brother and how he always talked about this character from a novel called Gosko Budori. Is that how you would pronounce it? Do you have a...
That's how I would try to pronounce it.
Yeah, in my head, when I first read this, I completely just read it as a different name. Not like, completely different, but...
It's like reading a Pokemon name for the first time. Your brain somehow reads it differently in a different
Yeah,
way.
exactly.
You try and say, you're like, and that's not right.
I ordered the letters a bit differently in my head. I was thinking like Gusoku or something like that, but now that when I actually typed it down, I was like, wait, it's like Gosko. What is this? I don't know what it means. I didn't actually look into this novel at all. I don't know if this is... Okay, so I presume it's a real novel.
2012, that looks like a cat. And then it's based on a children's novel by the same title by Kenji Miyazawa.
Yep, that would be the right one.
Okay. It doesn't link to the book, but Kenji Miyazawa, Kenji Miyazawa died at the age of 37 in 1933. So,
oh wow,
he's a young author. What was it called? What was the last name? Is Budori.
Yep, Budori.
Okay, it's not even mentioned in his thing. Budori. Yeah, no, it is. His best-known works include Night of the Galactic Railroad and Life of Gusto Borodi. But it just links to the animated film. It doesn't link to... Huh. Yeah, okay. It just links to the animated film and not to the actual book on Wikipedia, which is kind of weird. But yeah, it's... Okay. Yeah, just seems kind of interesting.
Cool.
I'm going to continue looking on this, and if you want to keep on talking.
Sure. Yeah. So, Gusko is a character from this novel who, after growing up, knowing so much hardship personally, he becomes a scientist who is dedicated to bringing happiness to humanity and combating the suffering of humanity. And Yamagata highly admired this character and essentially wanted to be like him. He viewed the Von Braun engine as like his work that could potentially bring happiness to everybody, just like Gusko Budori. So this essentially is somebody who has bought in, like referring to Yamagata, he's somebody who has bought into the big humanitarian goals of the Jupiter mission that Hachi kind of talked about a bit in I think it was the Tanabe's introduction chapter when he's explaining the mission and like all the good it could do for people. Actually, no, this is actually in Locksmith's introduction chapter. This is like Hachi comes to realize that he's doing this selfishly, but before he does that, before he realizes he is like Locksmith, he talks about how like this could bring power to like a bunch of people. It's when he's talking to Goro, trying to convince Goro to go on the mission. He's like talking about all the humanitarian benefits and all the good it could do for humanity. And Goro's like, I don't really care about that. And the kind of person Yamagata admires is somebody who does care about that and is doing this solely for the purpose, for the good of everybody, who's, you know, pursuing the good of everybody, you know, for you, others, the universe, just like in the poem. He wants to be like that. And in his admiration, he kind of places the Von Braun mission with the engine that he's working on. He places that on that same level. And what's so tragic about it, though, is that he's ultimately just playing a part in satisfying Locksmith's selfish desire to just complete this mission and you know, reach his goal. Because Locksmith's introduction chapter is all about how a lot of these grand goals, like the one rocket, I don't remember the name of the scientist.
Von Braun, I think, right?
Oh yeah, I guess it technically is. Yeah, but yeah, the whole goal was to essentially take his selfish dream and project it onto humanity and make it humanity's dream. When in reality, it is just a selfish thing that you want to do for you. But Yamagata was approaching this from the Gusko Borori perspective of, I can do this to bring happiness to everybody. And it's just a complete contradiction of what we know Locksmith's genuine, like, real approach to this was, what his desires are. But so Yamagata's sister tells Locksmith that Yamagata looked up to him and said that he was a Gusko Butori, which is so interesting to me. So Yamagata truly believed that Locksmith was leading this mission for the sake of humanity, and not just because Locksmith had made this own dream that of humanity. And this makes me wonder, like, how long did Yamagata know Locksmith? Did Locksmith at one point feel he was doing this for everyone, not just himself? Did he change at some point, or did Yamagata just not understand him and have a completely different perspective? It's just so interesting to me. But then she points the gun at him and asks, did you kill my brother? Oh yeah, my brother, did you kill him? And this is his response to this is so interesting to me, because in the car we have him saying, I killed him. He admits that he feels responsible. But when she's in this moment, when it comes down to admitting that, he says, I had as little to do with your brother's death as you had to do with his life. He completely shoves off the responsibility here. It almost feels like under the pressure of actually admitting this, he's not able to. Mm-hmm. That and I don't know why, and that's what makes it so interesting to me, because if he seems like the kind of guy who just wouldn't care, right? Wouldn't care what people think. I'm responsible for it, and sure, maybe he's just trying not to get shot, of course, but.
True.
I mean, with all the other stuff he says, it doesn't. I don't think he's trying to avoid getting shot either. It really is just like the egg. He's not acknowledging it. He seems incredibly calm. And, this is where it first stood out to me that, okay, maybe there's more beneath the surface here. Because if he truly didn't care what people think, like, why wouldn't he say, like, yes, I killed him?
Exactly.
But, and I'm more inclined again to think that in the car he's being genuine, and here he's unwilling to say that. But even though this dream was his own, he shifts the blame for Yamagata's death onto Yamagata himself, because he chose the job. He wasn't afraid to die because he was Gusko Budori. And that's when we get this beautiful double-page spread. Your love did not affect his choices, and your love could not have saved him. And I feel like this is like his ultimate self-delusion that he has, that lets him cope with how isolated he's made himself in the pursuit of his goal, where he devalues love entirely and doesn't acknowledge it. He chooses, again, the thing with the egg. He says, do not acknowledge him. He copes with this by just not acknowledging the meaning of it and the importance of it. And the only way he could accept all this, like, hatred of him and completely focus on his goal is by not acknowledging the pain of not having love. And the only way to not acknowledge that pain is to not acknowledge the overwhelming good of having it and what it can do for people. And how love can, could save somebody's life. But and this is the moment that pushes her over the edge, and she turns the gun on herself. And
his face is great. I love this like little on 257, just like it's almost like he's like, huh?
Yeah.
But
I really love the panel on the page before that. After the double page spread, the way she's looking down. I love the way Yukimura does the hair here. Reminds me a lot of the way he draws Fee's hair later. It just looks so good. But so she points the gun at herself and she pulls the trigger, and as she does it, he stops her. And this, again, it's him contradicting himself. After saying all of this about how love could not save somebody like her brother who had accepted his own death, he intervenes and does exactly that. She's accepted her own death, and he saves her. For what? True, and what would you call this? Is this love? Like, is this... He could have just let her done it. But he chooses... He chooses to contradict himself again. And be the reason that, like, her own choice didn't matter here. Just like Yamagata's choice to work on the engine didn't matter because he could have been saved. He didn't choose to die. Well, in a way he did, but love still could have taken him back from the brink. And here he contradicts himself, and he does exactly that.
Yeah, and in that way, with all this stuff, I take what I said back with the page before. It's like when he's like squinting like that. It's almost reminds me in a way of like an Askeladd like annoyance face at Thor. Yep. And it's like, no, you don't get it. Like, what are you doing? And this almost reminds me because at the end, like his bodyguard goes to him and says, "Director, are you all right?" And he says, "Yes, but I feel sad." And it's like this moment of like where he lets down his guard, which is very similar to Askeladd. Askeladd doesn't really let down his guard until the final moments, and this is kind of linked into the final chapter as well, and he has some interesting just one-off lines. He's kind of almost monologuing to himself, and it's like, there's a deep sorrow in there as he's lost a friend, and he doesn't know how to quite cope with it, and he generally does care about this person being, Shin Yamagata being dead. That matters to him quite a bit. But he tries not to let it get to him. It's an interesting... Yeah.
And that last line is exactly it. The like, yes, but I'm sad. It's the inevitable end for somebody who approaches life as Locksmith has, where you pursue this single selfish goal, you cast love aside, you don't acknowledge it, and in the end, you've achieved what you set out to do, you're fine. Like, yes, I reached my goal, but I'm sad. I'm empty. There's something missing. And Locksmith knows that he's responsible for each life taken by his dream. And now that the dream's kind of reached his climax, he's just left with nothing but this like profound sadness. And all he can do is not acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much, there's so many layers to him now. I felt like he just went from simple, he has this big dream, but it's humanity's dream, but it's actually just his own dream. But I feel like Yukimura's just taken on that and extrapolated in so many different directions here and added so many layers to it. And like he went from a character that I personally didn't really have as much interest in anymore. I'd kind of forgotten about him until this chapter. And I was like, oh yeah, he's kind of important. And now all of a sudden, I'm just blown away by how much was added to him here and how much, because I love characters like this. I love characters who contradict themselves because they're doing something that isn't right. And part of them knows it, but they're so far into it that they do what they think they need to do, but then when push comes to shove, they contradict themselves, just like he does here. And I love that. I love that the panel of him saying like your love couldn't have saved him is just such it's a lie. Like, yeah, sure, like she wasn't able to convince him not to pursue the dream, just like in the story where Budori's sister can't convince him not to go on that last mission, the last thing with the volcano, and like by having this volcano erupt and kill him, he's able to harness all this power to like help humanity. And ultimately it's a good thing, but like the sister always worries about him not coming back, and then inevitably he doesn't come back. And it's so sad that, like, yes, the love didn't bring him back there, but, you know, it was also love is the reason he pursued this. Love is the reason he was going on this mission, right? So it's not even that love couldn't save him, it's that love is the reason that he felt the need to sacrifice himself. And I feel like Locksmith, either from not wanting to acknowledge it or actually just not truly understanding, he doesn't see how love was involved. He doesn't see the importance of love here. Because again, yeah, he chooses not to acknowledge it. By not acknowledging the hatred of people towards him, he has to also not acknowledge love. And yeah, this just perfectly sets him up for the last two chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have anything else you want to say about 18?
I don't think so. I think you covered it really well. It was very interesting. I didn't really... Yeah, it was mainly just this final line of like that kind of felt very poignant to me. That there is depth in, but I didn't quite catch it. So yeah, no.
It definitely took the second read through, because I really liked it on the first read through. I was very emotionally invested in the chapter, but I the second read through is when I started like feeling like I was starting to peel back the layers a bit more. But he really feels like an Askeladd, like a Kettle kind of character, where there's so many layers that I keep peeling back, and I feel like I'm not really fully understanding him just yet. Mm-hmm. So I just want to think about this character more, because I really like him now after this one. Cool. Okay, so going on to chapter 25, where we're skipping over all of Fee's arc. So these are the last two chapters of the volume, and we're finally seeing Hachi. We're finally seeing the mission.
Yeah, it's been so long.
And what's so great about this to me is that, like, we go through the first 3 volumes, like, ready for the mission to start, because the mission seems so important. We're just like Hachi, you're thinking how important this mission is, and it's kind of an afterthought now. And I feel like to some people it might seem like the plot lost itself and then it suddenly ended. But it feels like that's kind of the point. Like, the mission has lost all importance, because what's really important is these characters. It's yeah, exactly. Everything that everything Fee is feeling right now with her, with what she went through, with the whole like space war thing. Like, that's just what Planetes is about. It is not about the mission, and Hachi's learned that too, because we see that, like, he's kind of bored on the mission. He's not really doing anything relating to the mission anymore. And again, yeah, I just think it's like this meta thing of it's only the last 2 chapters and we don't even care about the what's going on the mission, because that's not even important anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. Is like this, like, it is a great meta sense of like you're expecting to go on a massive journey, do crazy stuff, have a lot of plot, and I've complained, or like I've remarked on how the plot feels like it's a bit nonsensical, a bit all over the place. But what we've fallen in love with, both of us, has been the dialogue, the hangout, the smaller bits. Yeah, and that's just the message of the story. It's just like slice of life is fine. It's okay. So it's about the journey and not the destination, but sometimes you don't even need a journey.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. So, so we have hachi now, and this is kind of the final state of hachi. This is like the ultimate. I guess this is his kind of like after all this transforming he's gone through. Every volume's kind of transformed him. This is like the final state of hachi. So this is what Yukimura wants us to take note of. This is the person that he has learned to be after everything, and the person we should be taking a close look at.
He's got the Yukimura headband on. He's got the Yukimura goatee. Like he's full on Yukimura now. So that's another thing that I instantly noticed. Like, this guy's looking kind of similar to a certain someone.
Yeah, I love how like he's just so people oriented now. Like he's running around like taking videos, taking pictures, documenting their time on the ship, laughing with people. He's just become a people person because of everything that he's learned. Of the importance of love, the importance of connection. And I love that we could just see him kind of in his element now. But what I really love, I think the point of this chapter is the meta angle of the captain.
Yeah.
So he's stressing so much about what his speech should be when they reach Jupiter, because the first step on the moon, the like one small step for man that goes down in history.
Yeah,
and he
Giant
knows
Leap for Mankind is
he knows. Oh God,
classic, absolute banger quote, absolute banger.
And he just knows the importance of it. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, even though it doesn't really feel like a massive leap for mankind because we haven't gone that much further after the moon so far. We kind of got to the moon and we were like, oh, the Cold War ended. Okay, call it quits, boys.
But yeah, so he's like stressing out extremely about what he's going to say, and this is essentially Yukimura stressing about what are the last lines of my manga going to be. How do I end this? And it's
what's even better
so
is we're
good.
reading this as Yukimura is literally gone on
stressing
a rant on
about
Twitter, trying to figure out how to end his manga.
Yep. And I feel like reading this gave me a lot of comfort based on what he's been saying on Twitter recently about trying to end Vinland Saga. He's very stressed about it. And it seems like, no, he's not like, oh God, what do I do? It's just like, I need to do this perfect. This needs to be perfect. And that's, I have so much faith in him because I feel like here he takes the challenge. So the captain is like super stressed about it. He writes like a rough draft and then like everyone's reading it and they all think it's bad. And then like Hachi and Goro are giving tips and giving like their kind of complaints about it. And they're saying a lot of things that sound like what you'd expect a person like Yukimura to worry about when trying to end the manga, saying he's trying to be too noble. I'm sure that is something Yukimura has heard a lot with the things he writes about. Yeah. And there's no real theme. Definitely very Planetest, where Planetest is very all over the place a bit. No, like not like a straight line of plot, like, of narrative. It's very everywhere. And so he's worrying about like that kind of disconnection of theme and then alienating some of your audience. I'm sure that's something Yukimura has thought about, especially in Vinland Saga, with how like the prologue changes for the rest of the story. Very much a valid concern of his that I could see him having. But what's so beautiful about this is it like says later, I forget exactly where he says it, but the captain is trying to write a speech that will move every living person. And Hachi questions, like, is that really true? When Sally says it's impossible to do something like that, to touch everybody. And Hachi says, like, is it really impossible? And that to me is Yukimura accepting the challenge. And what's so beautiful about this is that Planetest throughout its entire like run has been so incredibly focused on exactly this, on what connects people beyond ethnicity, culture, age. This speech, like, I feel like by writing this whole thing, he's prepared himself for it. Mm-hmm. And you can see where it's going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think...
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it is a sense of like you're trying to communicate a message, not being pompous about it, not trying to act like you're better than everybody else, trying to be humble, but you do think it's worth being heard. And how do you get it out there?
Yeah.
And in a way, Yukimura has always dealt with these things. Like, Vinland Saga, in a way, does talk about violence. And he tries to make it applicable for all humanity. He's written about a European time from the perspective of a Japanese man, about someone trying to get out of the world, just in general, not just like... It is mainly Viking culture, but it's about like how to deal with like the violence being a human thing, a global thing. And the same here with like, what do you do with your purpose, your goals? What is love? And like this wider reaching thing of trying to be profound but not pompous, and it's hard to do.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's just, I feel like I wasn't even worried about it when I was reading, because I had so much faith that Yukimura would end this on a really, really good note, just because of how the story has been built up, how like focused it has always been on what connects everybody. So all he has to do is talk about the thing that connects everybody, that we've talked about the whole series connects everybody, and it's love, right? So it's just perfect setup to Yukimura like being given the challenge of doing this, like he sort of passes it off to Hachi, the captain does. And I mean that comes later at the end, near the end of the chapter. But like the challenge is passed off to Hachi, and Hachi doesn't seem concerned about it, because Hachi spent this whole story preparing for this moment of learning about love and how that connects everybody, and he sees what he needs to say. But I mean, we'll get to that with the last chapter. But we have this moment, of course, with the fight being broken up.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, actually, before this, he kind of talks to one of the guys on his PC, and the guy's name is Rolled, which is the same.
Oh, Snake, yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting. I don't think it means anything, but yeah. So this guy's kind of, he's interesting because he's just staring at a blank screen. He ruffles his hair, and then he seems to just have doubts about his wife loving him. I think that was it.
Yeah.
And anyway, I haven't pieced this together, so I'm just kind of, it's like, what about how's your gorgeous wife? My wife probably not going to be my wife much longer. Why do you think she's only human? We're 800 million kilometers apart. It's going to be 7 years. So they're not even so they're at Jupiter, but they're going to be gone for a long time.
Yeah.
And since I'm not there to talk it out of it, I think it's over. You should be careful, Hachi. And it's interesting, he's really down about, he feels like his love is being lost, in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, I feel like lots of these small bits, Yukimura uses them to add up. Why are they doing, flexibility training here? I'm not quite sure. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it's just a joke. Maybe it's just here's a funny thing that Hachi's is taking a picture of. This guy kind of looks a bit like an alien. His head's quite kind of big.
I mean, it's definitely about you got to stay healthy when you're cramped up in this ship, I guess.
Yeah.
But the thing with this, I didn't take many notes about the thing with this guy and his wife not being his wife anymore. I didn't think a lot about it, but I think it's so interesting that Hachi, compared to him, Hachi doesn't even have any worries, and he's sending things to Tanabe and his friends. He's not really, he's kind of had the realization already that distance doesn't matter when you have that love.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting about this guy is that it doesn't feel like he's even doing anything wrong either, you know? So it doesn't feel like there's a solution to his problem that Hachi knows and he doesn't. So are we just to think that they don't have, him and his wife just don't have love in the right way? I don't know. I don't know what Yukimura is really getting at with the introduction of this character, besides just to show that Hachi doesn't have these concerns.
I think in one way it's implied here that this Rolled guy shouldn't be on this ship because he should be spending time with his wife. And,
like he's here for the wrong reason.
yeah, like
He's here for the hachi, the original hachi reason.
yeah, it's like yeah,
No, that's a good point. It's almost like a little glimpse of like what would it have been like for somebody to come out here with that kind of more selfishly driven reason, and to, I guess, not leave things the right way.
yeah.
I don't know, because the story definitely doesn't criticize Hachi for going,
No,
which is interesting.
no.
So the guy's not wrong for going, but what could he have done better? I don't know. That's why I feel like I kind of didn't really talk about it that much, or at least write about it that much, because I felt like I didn't know what this guy was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that makes sense. That like, if Hachi went on this mission, like after at the end of volume 2, when he's like off to Jupiter, if he didn't have that extra bit of time with Tanabe to really grow the relationship, maybe he would have been like this guy.
Yeah, maybe.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And he, to be fair, he kind of looks like Hachi in the first chapter with his blonde hair. So
It's a good point, actually. But so yeah, later we have I do think it's cute, this one moment he's talking to Sally and he's just talking about like, yeah, this guy my wife met named the Baron says he's an alien, really weird dude. I like the Baron.
The Baron's the goat, man. Love him.
But
Also, I just love Sally's presence. She's a vibe.
I love Sally. Yeah, I think she's awesome. We should
Her
have
and
got a little
Goro
bit more.
just like chilling. It's like, is it about women? And like Goro's like, it's about women. And she's like, yeah, it's about a woman.
See, these guys are fighting. Okay, so yeah, I guess the point of it was more probably the point of that guy was to set up this moment where apparently like these two are like friends or whatever, and the guy, the blonde hair, it was like dating Sasha or whatever, and then the other guy gave up on her to give him the chance or whatever. Like he felt like they were better together than he was with her. Yeah, he's like, I gave her up because it was you, not because she loved some dipshit. Do you understand? And yeah, they start having this fight, but it seems like they're supposed to be friends because they have this history with each other. I like how before we even really know that Hachi's there, we just see him just holding on to the other guy.
yeah. And it's like, it's a very Thorfinn thing that Hachi is doing, just trying to prevent violence at any cause possible.
That's why I was gonna say this is again super proto Vinland, the like putting himself between the two of them punching, and then they like decide they're like, okay, I don't want to fight anymore. It kind of reminds me of Gudrid going up and punching Thorkel, and he's like, I don't want to fight anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it just shows the kind of person he's become, like entirely selfless over the selfishness that he once had, where he wants to protect these two, not just like, protect them from getting hurt, but protect them from doing this to each other and kind of taking the brunt of it, fighting the real battle, very Thorfinn, 100 punches.
esque. Yeah, literally, yeah.
And he says like, what was it? Damn, you both made it my business. Out here in space, everyone's business is my business. I thought it was a funny line. Yeah. And then he just falls over.
He's like, damn you both. I made it my business. Because, like, I'm going to care about it because I care about it. You ain't going to stop me kind of deal.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because then you have this weird, like, you don't notice, I didn't notice it the first time this Goro panel, as he kind of gets his eyes light up. He's like, huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and he talks about it later.
Exactly, but then Goro's like, that's a interesting perspective. And that's why he should do the speech. I'm not sure if he had any, like, what did Goro see in that exactly?
Yeah, because I don't think that line is that good. I feel like there's I feel like we could have had a better line here. That like, because it doesn't really feel like it hits. It just kind of feels like, I made it my business, I guess. Out here in space, everyone's business is my business. I guess the more important part is the I made it my business. I think it's interesting that I mean, combine this with the kind of stuff from earlier in the manga about how everywhere is space, everywhere is the same. You know, like beyond Earth is space.
Yeah.
So like he really is saying like it's not just like no out on this ship, out on this mission, like everyone's business is my business. It's like the business of everybody is my business because you're always in space. I don't think Goro sees that. I don't know exactly what Goro was so taken aback by with this one.
It's like hashtag bro, this guy's deep.
But yeah, but that's what inspires the captain. Well, it inspires Goro to ask the captain to have Hachi do the speech instead. Let's see. He doesn't seem to I don't know, be worried about it.
No.
Yeah, he doesn't. I guess we don't get really much of his reaction to it because he's kind of more reacting to what just happened to him, not the speech part of it.
Yeah.
I just love the dynamic with Goro. They're both stupid. They're both incredibly stupid.
It's very funny.
I feel like I really like this chapter. I feel like the point of it really was just to, get us back with Hachi, reestablish Hachi where he is now, to set up for the last chapter, and to sort of the meta stuff, of course, of like Yukimura stressing about how do I end this and thinking about how I end this and passing it off to Hachi and taking up the challenge of that speech that will represent because it has to be the capstone of what Planetes is and what message it wants to send, and it needs to be something profound, and that's what sets us up for next chapter.
Yeah, which is a doozy of a chapter.
It is
because I'm like, it's like. Anyway, it kind of ends on this weird thing where like Goro, like it's like the most Goro thing is like Goro also doesn't want to admit that he's lazy, but he also genuinely thought there was something good there. Maybe he didn't though. Maybe that's the whole joke. He's just like, no, but there was a genuine shot of his reaction there, so I think it was. Yeah, it's interesting. Kind of we start off and they're correcting and they're landing and they get in front of Jupiter. And then they do like something which I just hope Yukimura and his dad have done this before, where they're like, "You gigantic bastard! You think you can take us?" They're just joking about it together. But it's like they were just called stupid, and then Tweedledum and Tweedledee just turn up on Jupiter. It's so fun.
I love the color page here again. He's been nailing it with these color pages every chapter, and this is just another incredibly good one.
Yeah. Have you do you read One Punch Man?
No, I don't. I watched the first 2 seasons of the anime.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason why I say this is because like recently there was like a chapter of like Jupiter and it was colored. Anyway, this kind of just reminded me of it. So I was like, this is a recent Jupiter. Who would have guessed that they find space? Hashtag spoilers. Not really, but anyway, it's Jupiter. So. But then, we kind of, they have a bit of a jokey thing about how, they're going to take on Jupiter, and then it goes back to Locksmith, and it's an old style car, first of all. This is kind of weird, old technology, probably old for the time as well. But, anyway, it's an interesting car, at least. They've got some interesting new technology sci-fi thing. And then, like, as they're waiting for it, they start playing, and this is the title of the chapter,
What a Wonderful World.
The song by, the great song, It's a Wonderful Life by Louis Armstrong.
You mean What a Wonderful World?
What a Wonderful World. Yeah, sorry. What a Wonderful Life is a movie, I think.
Yeah, it's the
Christmas movie, right?
Yeah, the Christmas movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but this one's an absolute classic. And it's one of those things where it's like, Yukimura showing that he's got like wide variety of, cultural taste and stuff, and interesting. Like it cuts off "What a Wonderful," and then he cuts off the sound.
Yeah. I love the choice of having this song because
It's so good. Perfect song.
Well, one, yeah, it's just good, but it's also just a song that's so celebratory of Earth and humanity, and it's being played as a means of celebrating humanity's next big step away from it. You know, it's kind of a bit ironic in that way, but it's also, you know, the whole message of the story of like the home stuff that we talked about in the beginning has kind of been a bit more recontextualized. That it's not home as much as it is love, it is people, right? And this song kind of brings us back to Earth. It reminds us of what is important about reaching Jupiter, because it's not about the people who are there. It's about humanity's achievement that they're sharing together. Mm-hmm. And I love it. Oh man, this chapter though, the stuff with Locksmith here is so good, because we have him come to the church. And again, I think this is the church that we see Fee in front of. Don't know why Locksmith would be in Florida. Maybe it's not the same church, but it's definitely interesting.
Let's analyze this a bit.
It's definitely interesting that they have the church imagery either way in both of those chapters.
Church. It does look. Ooh, it is white. Both are white. I just thought. Hold up. No. So she sits on the tire and she looks back down around. I guess that church could be similar. I don't know, like the. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah,
yeah, it's not really important.
For sure. It doesn't really matter too much, but.
Yeah, I don't really know how the church was super important for Fee's stuff. I guess the wishing upon the stars, like kind of faith thing maybe, but it's definitely more important here because we have this guy in the confessional and he's talking about how he feels like he killed his son because he pushed his son to be a football star, and when he didn't make the pros, he slit his own wrists in the bathroom. And this does definitely remind me of Locksmith with Yamagata, where like he feels responsible for that death because of what he's done, because it was his selfish dream that he was pushing on him to be the professional player that he couldn't be. And I definitely think Locksmith hears this and takes note of this. I can't tell. He's outside and the confession's happening inside. I don't know if he hears this. It's just the way he looks on. I think. What page is this? Where he's looking like to the left as the guy says, "I thought I loved my son, but I only loved myself." Mm-hmm. And I mean that's definitely Locksmith for sure. That like, I only loved myself. Very much him. It's definitely a criticism of him that we're meant to draw the comparison between the two characters. And the guy says, I don't deserve to be loved anymore. And the priest like pauses for a bit and he responds, for he makes his sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the just and the unjust. It's that fair, unbiased treatment of people, the unbiased love of people equally, as he says. He loves your son in death and he loves his father in pain. God is love, no matter the sin, you are loved always. Very much Willibald, very much Vinland Saga. Mm-hmm. I was so excited reading this because just seeing like, oh my god, like the way this plays into everything that comes later that Yukimura will go on to write is so good. But we see that Locksmith knows this guy and that he was I think a professor of who taught Locksmith. And Locksmith was like one of his best students. Yeah, one of the best engineering students I ever had. Mm-hmm. You worked very hard, almost fanatically. And that's like, again, very much the person he still is now, the fanatic pursuit of the dream. And like he was consumed by his work then, and he still is now. And But it is interesting that he says, Locksmith says here, it's my life. However, my passion for science was never like yours. I wonder why he says this.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I just want to comment here that Locksmith's face is so much more like cheeky and wiry, and it's clearly like he's got his front up again.
Yes, exactly. It looks a lot like his introduction chapter.
Yeah, and so the thing is, like his passion for science was never like yours. I don't think it's actually like a measurement of passion, but it's like I'd say maybe that the priest is maybe more interested in science for the sake of knowledge, while Locksmith may be more like, oh, I just want to achieve goals through science and use it as a tool, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
So, but maybe also a way to go to him is like his passion was never the same as his, and he needs his passion or something. But
I was definitely interpreting this chapter a bit more like not to contrast these two, but definitely like that this guy is a representation again of where Locksmith's going, where he's going to end up. And just like, you know, he got a lot of his probably ideas from this guy. Was a Dr. Ramon. So it seems like he got a lot from Ramon. But yeah, I guess it does kind of, this line serves to contrast them more than like compare them. And I don't, it does seem to be based on like the fanaticism, like you said before. So maybe this guy just wasn't as consumed by it, maybe. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on that.
He's still lonely, which I think is a key thing. It's like they're both men that still alone. And it kind of, I like how it doesn't like it contrasts religion and science, but not completely, because this guy used to be a scientist, and it kind of almost puts him on the same side, like two sides of the same coin. Say, discovering truth is the quest of a scientist. God is out there, hiding in the vastness of space, just watching our pain. Canute moment. I'm not so generous as to letting him do that forever. As if they say, and if, as they say, God is love, then we should become God. Otherwise, God continues to hide, and we humans never know true love. And you're like, okay, this is like the most Vinland Saga thing, but the difference is that it's just on Tanabe. That whole last bit about true love is just like the focus on Tanabe at the end there, almost to show the contradiction in this point.
Exactly.
And it's and I mean, I guess I'm gonna put my card on the table. It's like, you know, Planet Test has been so much about, you have lofty goals, you know, you can have all these things, but don't forget the humanity that ties you back to Earth. Don't forget to come home. Don't forget. Don't go beyond. You know, I just think that, and it's like, Locksmith is so much almost like a religiosity to find God, and when he says God, like this could almost be. Maybe not in like this. I know we as a Christian situation, but it's almost like to discover nature, discover the natural world, discover like not necessarily a personal being of God, but like the one who controls the laws of nature themselves. And it's like this God is hiding from us, and we must become like him. You know, to know true love, we need to figure out love. We need to go out there to find.
It's a problem to solve.
But love's home. Love's at home. Love's Tanabe, waiting for Hachi to come home. That is love. That's true love. You don't find true love out in the world. You find it within yourself, within other humans, and that you can have true love, which is crazy because that's almost the contradiction of Vinland Saga, where Vinland Saga is saying like true love is not human, and Tanabe is.
Well, that's the thing. Thorfinn is exactly that as well.
Love, you know, which that agape. But it is like almost a soft contradiction where like Tanabe is the antithesis where like humans can have true love, because that's how she treats Baron, that's how she treats Hachi, and I mean, and then to kind of keep on going on my ramble here, and I'm sure you would have picked up on this, but it's like Fee asks her, it's like, what makes, you know, it's a big day for Hachimaki, but what makes Hachi special to you? What makes Hachi? Why would you want to marry him? And she's like, and I found this so confusing at first. It's like, nothing in particular. It's like, what? No, so you didn't know? And she's like, oh, he's just I married him because I had no one else. This is the first guy to come along, and yeah, and you think, okay, this doesn't sound like she's really that committed to the marriage, or something like that. And then she responds and she says, no, I love him very, very much. And it's this feeling of like, it's interesting because it does kind of reflect onto the romance of the previous volume, where in some ways it does feel a little bit fast. It does feel like, okay, we're moving along here, but that's Planet Test. Planet Test likes to move quickly. But she didn't discriminate. She found a guy. She loves everybody. But like the fact that she doesn't love him, she doesn't find him particularly special, like maybe that's also like Yukimura thinking to himself about his wife in a way. Like he feels like he's not very special. That's a classic Yukimura thought.
Yeah,
that
for
could be tying into it as well. But it's almost like, no, she just loves Hachi. She loves everybody, and that's just how she is. Like, and that's not a bad thing. She's not putting down Hachi. She's just raising everybody to Hachi's level in a way. So, yeah, that was my reading of that situation. I'm not sure if you have any more thoughts on that.
I definitely reacted the same way when she first said that. I was like, whoa, what are we talking about here? But, yeah, it's just like, it's definitely like this statement on what true love is. It's just simply something you feel. It's not something that can really be put into words. That's the way I interpret it. Not that, like, nothing about Hachi is special, just that, like, she doesn't need to, like, put together a bolded list to know how she feels. That's the way I read into it.
And Tanabe never felt like the need to have like the most in-depth explanations ever. That's her character, like with the band or with her dad when she's like, oh, a woman's intuition. She's kind of just on instinct with how she does these things. It's not a super deep, overly scientific, calculated thought process. As you say, it's just that kind of inner gut that she has.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the perfect contradiction there. The fact that like you have Locksmith talking about love like a problem that needs to be solved. Like there has to be some kind of like a equation, some kind of law that to make sense of it. Where Tanabe doesn't need to make sense of it. She feels what she feels, and that's what makes it so powerful. It's just simply a feeling that can't be put into words. It can't be defined, except as just like a genuine feeling, and she's like the most genuine person you'll ever meet. But one thing that I thought was interesting with the Vinland Saga part that you said, like that this sort of contradicts Vinland Saga, but you also have Thorfinn in Vinland Saga is supposed to exist as that contradiction, like in the same exact way, where I feel like Vinland Saga definitely takes a more pessimistic angle on it, where we're like a vast majority of people are without love, but then you have Thorfinn as the contradiction to that. Whereas I feel like in Planet Test, we're in a far less brutal time, and love is probably you see it a bit more in people, and I feel like Planet Test is genuinely a bit more optimistic towards people, whereas Vinland Saga is, yes, a bit more pessimistic, but definitely because of the time period it's set in, and but it still holds the same value of like there is that potential in people to embody that. And people can do that. So don't lose hope in that. And that's sort of the lesson Canute learns at the end of the farm arc. It's that like seeing Thorfinn as that living proof that people have this potential has kind of changed his perspective.
Yeah.
But coming back to Planet Test a bit more, especially Locksmith. Before that whole conversation about love that we have him, and you mentioned this a bit earlier when we were talking about chapter 18, but he now has a whole new plan, designing a new ship to go to Saturn this time. And this just shows like he has not learned anything. He is essentially already like he reached his goal and now it's on to the next. Like there's no break, there's no time to stop and time to reconnect with people. It's simply just the next mission because that's all he has. That's all he can do to avoid acknowledging the sadness that he feels. I'm sure like he started this designing this mission like immediately after the Von Braun launched, or maybe even like after he felt that sadness at Yamagata's grave. Maybe that inspired him. But it's definitely like a profound emptiness once you reach that end goal, and the only thing that can fill it is to just keep going. And just compare this to Hachi. Like, actually, no, let's get to Hachi's final speech, and then I'll talk about the comparison there. But so real quick, I don't want to end our discussion of this chapter with talking about Vinland Saga, so I kind of want to get this out of the way. But this is exactly how I pictured the last chapter of Vinland to be. This is, like, I feel like I picked up Planet Test because I really wanted to see how does Yukimura end a series, and this is exactly what I see. Canute obviously has not been a big player in the story since, like, his, since the end of the farm arc. He's kind of been in the background, and I feel like the last chapter we're going to get that, like, that jumping back and forth between the perspectives of the two, just to show, like, where has Thorfinn ended up versus where has Locksmith ended up. Where has Canute ended up. It's the same. I feel like we're gonna have the same kind of structure there to, you know, see like the end of Canute's empire and how that has panned out for him, because they're both going to fail, right? So we need to see the comparison between the two. I don't think it'll end on as positive a note. I'm sure it'll probably be more somber. But I do expect this kind of structure where we have a character like Locksmith and Canute, not really a big player in the story anymore, but like they still represent that core contradiction to the protagonist. They are the other side of the coin.
Yeah. Dude, it would be crazy if Willibald just turns up for the final chapter.
I would. Canute talking to him in the confessional.
Yeah, and Willibald like takes a swig and he's like, the universe is vast, more vast than anyone can fathom, and then just goes in the same monologue, and it was like, it was just like, then it ends.
I would love it.
Like, Thorfinn goes
fiction.
into space, and this is the prologue to Planet S, the real magnum opus of Yukimura. Yeah,
but that's the note I took at first, at least. From the perspective of wanting to see how does Yukimura end something, I feel like there's a lot of good notes to take here. And I feel like anybody who's a Vinland Saga fan who isn't really planning to read Planet Test, I would recommend reading the last chapter at least, if you want to get a feel for where Yukimura is going and how he likes to end his story. I think it's worth it. But obviously, it's a short series. Just read the whole thing. It's so good.
Yeah.
But
the problem is that you probably have to read every chapter twice.
But yeah, let's see. That's funny. They're doing on the radio. They got like all this planet theme songs playing. It's funny, but then
it's interesting. Like, I guess the priest was like, I'm tired of wandering. So it kind of suggests that he's like Locksmith. He's tired of wandering. I'm really tired. I just want peace. He's tired of looking so far out. He just wants to chill at home. We humans thirst for true love but cannot find it, and so we cannot help but wander the cosmos searching. Does Locksmith? No, Locksmith doesn't say. This is the priest saying, yeah. It's just a really ironic thing. It's like, and then the music is playing, and then he's
real
alone.
Quick
Locksmith
with this
is
part,
alone, not spending this monumental moment of his career getting to Jupiter with anybody in celebration. No, he's by himself in a car with the stars. It reminds me of like the page in Vinland Saga, the most recent episode of not most recent episode, but like one of the episodes of the anime where Thorfinn and Einar are looking up at the starry sky, looks so pretty, and then Hut is like, it's kind of like, I love how Hachi talks here. It's like this unpretentious. It's very casual and earnest and genuine. It's like the
hello, is this thing on?
yeah, exactly.
Before we get into Hachi's speech, real quick with the priest, I love that they talk about wandering, because that's a heavy theme of the prologue of Vinland. The the wandering aimlessly, and like, because like that's kind of what people are kind of framed as the people who are going around like fighting these nonsensical wars, like treating life as so invaluable. Yeah. It's treated as like they're wandering beasts, as usually how Vinland frames it. It's just the same kind of thing. Like the wandering in this sense is like this directionless like pursuit of these selfish goals.
Yeah.
That can only end with starting a new selfish goal. And that's the wandering. It's just the nonstop. And let's see. Yeah, I really like this priest guy. I think he was a great introduction.
It's a classic Yukimura character, just like, we're going to bring him in for one chapter, and he's going to be good.
Yeah. But I love that they're still hung up on love. And it's very interesting to me that, like, it's not like they've completely rejected it. It's that they are... They feel like it's this, like, impossible, unsolvable problem. It's like that pessimism that, like, Canute plays into a lot, where... if you accept that love is invaluable, that there's no love in people, you kind of, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You make it true by thinking that way. And just by thinking that there's love in everybody, you make that true as well. And I mean, I really like this page of where Hachi starts talking, like you said, like, the way like his face, Locksmith's face is kind of entirely shadowed out. And then like, it's almost like he turns towards the light a bit when Hachi talks. It's so good. And then Hachi's page where he's like, where his dialogue first shows up is like it is like a light. It's because you got that gradient on the sides. It feels like a flash of light that Locksmith is looking into. It's like he is the representation of what Locksmith thinks is impossible. So yeah, we have his last speech. I kind of want to just read out the whole thing. So I'm going to do that. So he says...
Go for it.
He says, I'm Hachirota Hishino, a crew member of the Jupiter round-trip ship, the Von Braun. I'm in orbit around Jupiter right now. Can you see Jupiter tonight in the night sky? I like how he tries to establish that connection between the people on Earth and him. And then you have this beautiful panel of the ship on Jupiter, in Jupiter's orbit, almost as if like you're looking up to it. And Hachi continues, I can't see the Earth from here. This is the longest journey I've ever been on. It took 1.5 years to get here. And during this past 1.5 years, I had a lot of free time. A lot of time to think. And tonight, I'm going to share a few of those thoughts with you. Before I became a crew member on the ship, I was a debris collector. My job was to pick up trash in space. I worked with some great people, but I didn't like my job that much. It was hard, dangerous work. And most of the time, we were shorthanded. And it was the absolute least cool job you could possibly do. I kept telling myself that I was only doing it temporarily, just to save up a little money. When I saved enough, I was going to buy my own spaceship, and then I was just going to explore. I was going to take that ship everywhere. I was finally going to feel real freedom. And you get the shot of the bike down there of him riding on his bike when he was younger, looking up to space.
Yeah.
And then he says, I knew I had to work really hard to buy a spaceship. I knew that I had to be really, really serious about it. And you see Locksmith here, and he's put into the frame here to think about his perspective on that. He felt that same thing. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I also like how Yuri's laughing and Fee's kind of like, this guy's mugging my job off at the moment in the background. And this is kind of changed later, so I love the faces in this.
Yeah. But like, this whole point about like, I had to work really hard. It's almost like, if it sounds like a bit childish in a way. It makes me think like this is a young Locksmith, what he's thinking. Like, I know I have to be really serious about it if I want to achieve it. Yeah. And that's kind of how he gets lost, like Hachi did. Hachi continues, so I decided to give up everything else in my life and focus on making and saving money. Nothing else mattered to me more than being free in space. But I learned that I couldn't stop loving people. I don't know if that's good or bad. All I know is that it's a strong power, way more powerful than nuclear fusion. And I know that every human has it. That's amazing and a little scary. I'd like to learn how to use this power. So once I return to Earth, I'm going back to being a trash man. It didn't seem so at the time, but it was a really good job.
And then
Yuri,
he's happy.
Yeah.
He's happy again, and Yuri, it's so
Yeah,
good.
oh, it's so good. And I like how Yuri's looking at her too, seeing the expression change. Yuri, Fee, I'll be back in 5 years. Please let me join your team again. Jupiter out. And then we have Locksmith just kind of like think to himself and then say, "You make it sound so easy, kid." And I like how that plays into Tanabe, like the whole Tanabe like comes off as like immature and inexperienced, but she really does know what she's talking about, and he kind of writes off Hachi in the same sort of way, like, "Oh, you make it sound so easy." But that's Hachi's final speech, and that is what Planet Test is about. It's about you can't stop loving people. You can't leave love behind. You can't forget about it. You can't leave home behind. It's that.
You can't leave people behind.
And I love how like at least like when we talked about that first volume, the compass just immediately set off all the flags that point towards this. And I love how from beginning to end, no matter how much this story seems to stray from what seems like the plot should be, it is this cohesive idea of look at all of these people, look at the connections you can make, look at Hachi learning to love and learning the importance of love. And it's that the whole way through. Mm-hmm. And I adored this panel. I cried when I read it. It's just so good.
Yeah. And then you have this ship dock next to some trash. They have to go out and get it. Yuri points. They turn, and maybe it's the sun they're looking at. Maybe it's Jupiter they're looking at. But Tanabe thinks to herself, "I learned that I couldn't stop loving people." And then the final page is like debris in the front around the Earth, and it's almost like the Earth at the end is like I was talking about earlier with like Baron and how they had this perfect communication. It's like this Earth we have, it's not perfect. We've messed it up.
Yes,
there's rubbish
exactly.
around it and everything, but we still love it here. It's still home. It's still ours. We don't need to leave it, I guess. There's like
you just helped me understand something, because I was going to say initially, weird that I feel like ending on that, I learned that I couldn't stop loving people, that double page spread, I would think that's a great place to end. But you're so absolutely right that the best way to end this is not looking out towards space, out towards like the vast expanse. It's to look back. Like not from this beautiful double page spread with like not a blemish on the screen. It's looking back at Earth and with all the imperfections surrounding it, all the rubbish, all the garbage. It's you're so right. I was like, oh, I like the previous page of it more as a final page, but no, this is the perfect final page for this story.
Yeah, and it's
not forgetting about home. It does not end without forgetting to look back where we came from.
Yeah, maybe they are looking at
fucking
Earth.
Awesome.
I mean, Earth would actually no, Earth is much closer to them, but maybe it's just awesome. And then that's the end of the book. It's like it's this weird sense of like profoundness, just like that it allows for, and so
It's so good.
yeah, it's just like. Yeah, and I think if Yukimura can end Vinland Saga like that, that is perfect. This sense of like, or maybe he does like his Yukimura looking up at the night sky because he knows how to draw these things, and it's like, despite what happens, despite what may go down, even if it's like a tragic ending, if it ends on this and it's like he just has one little poignant message at the end of it, like it can.
That's all I need.
Really, just leave like they just need a profound final chapter. And I mean, I think as you said, like before, I was like, I didn't really think about how this would impact Vinland Saga's chapter, or if I should have more faith in it or not. But now you said that, I mean, that makes a lot more confidence in how Yukimura, even when he was new to this, he knew how to end a good manga, his first manga, well,
Yeah.
So,
and like obviously Planet Test does seem like a manga that changed as it went on. Yes, it has this cohesive idea, but it's just because that idea is really core to who Yukimura is as a person, as an author. So it does still feel cohesive, but it is kind of like it goes around. It doesn't have like a very solid narrative through line the whole time. It feels like Fee's arc is really the only time where chapters flow into each other in a natural way. And I feel like if he's able to end a series like that feels disconnected and yet at the end feels so connected, something that seems like it was changing a lot, he can absolutely nail the ending of a series that he's been thinking about the ending of since it began. I have absolute faith in that.
Yeah, for sure.
But enough about Vinland Saga. Planet Test, what did you think? Let's go overall thoughts.
Yeah, Planet Test. It's a weird one because in a lot of ways it's a bit messy. It's a bit.
Yes.
And the fact that I do think like I think it definitely gets better overall. It's clearly an author getting to grips with stuff, and also if it's something that you read monthly, it definitely works better on a monthly or in a volume by volume thing than altogether in a binge. Often, you read it through once and you have certain things and you're like, okay, that's interesting. That brings my thought, but I don't really understand what he's trying to get at.
Yep.
And things can feel a little obtuse, or maybe something like that. And maybe the plot isn't super compelling either. Like it's more like you have to eventually grow and love the characters and find the dialogue very fun and stuff like that. And maybe it could be a bit slower and a bit more longed out, but it shows a real. I think in some ways it's like, to me, it's a weird way because it felt like this manga in some ways have impacted me a lot in a small way because I've recently kind of in my personal life I've had a lot of shifts going from graduating from university to kind of going to the workspace and living by myself and trying to figure my footing in life once again. And it's not like I haven't had to do this before, but it's just another time of upheaval when you're trying to understand it. It feels like, in a way, like Yukimura is kind of writing down a lot of these thoughts and these questions and a lot of these feelings he's having in his early adulthood, and he's really quite a in-depth thinker himself. He likes to examine, and get to the depths of stuff, and that adds a great level of genuineness to these themes. And it feels very from the heart from him, more so than Vinland Saga in some ways. It feels very personal as Hachi's going through this journey, as Tanabe is going through this journey. Yukimura is very writing, and maybe Yukimura looks back on this and it cringes a little in a way. It's like, oh man, this is a bit too on the nose or something. You can imagine he's putting himself out there too much. But I kind of love this in a way, and coming from something that, is coming from a perspective where I love Vinland Saga, and I still think I prefer Vinland Saga overall. And not that there's much point in comparing, but it's like that Vinland Saga feels so much more cohesive as its own story, but as a delve into Yukimura and wanting to read this because now I'm a fan of Yukimura and going back to Planet Test, this is way more. This is so interesting, and it feels like you do get a real glimpse into Yukimura and he's growing as a person and stuff. Anyway, that's all a roundabout way to say this has really strong aspects of Yukimura. I think it has stronger aspects than Vinland Saga. And I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see how Vinland Saga ends. But as its own thing, it's it's got fun characters. It's got great written dialogue. It's got great expressions. It's got his older style of art to its best, and it's a really clear example. And I've had look at a few screenshots of the anime, and I'm kind of worried because I think the manga looks so much better. But that's a credit to the manga, and it just aids in the creation of this world. Something's poignant, and it gives you stuff to dig into. And while it, as I said before, some may feel it's obtuse, it's almost a bit almost unique. Not unique with manga, but lots of manga does an anime feel more I mean, there's of course like stuff like Serial Experiments Lane, or like even getting when you do have to dig a little bit more into this stuff. But it does feel like this is definitely a bit more mature in a way. Like it's trying to really get at stuff and teach you basic lessons that Yukimura has learned. Yeah. Sorry, that's a really roundabout way to say it, but yeah, I very, very enjoyable. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's hard hitting and definitely worth your time.
You've kind of like hit the nail on the head there. That like it's not perfect, but it really just has this charm and
Heart, soul,
feeling of like just being genuine. This like very like vulnerable, I would say, like for Yukimura to put himself out there, like this is his first manga, but it's just so like it feels like, you know, I feel like a lot of ways he kind of expects to be written off in a very similar way to someone like how Hachi saying like Locksmith saying in response to Hachi that you make it sound so easy. He kind of expects to be written off in that way, written off like Tanabe gets written off. But like he's willing to put it out there anyways, and it's just, and he does such a brilliant job. It just, I didn't think I would like it as much as I did. I have obviously, I think Yukimura is a brilliant author, and I wanted to read this because I had a lot of faith in him. And I feel like if I wasn't a fan of Yukimura already, and I didn't believe I knew like how profound he can be, I may not have had as much inspiration to read it. I don't know what it would have been like to read this without having read Vinland Saga already, without having come to understand him as an author so much already. But I honestly feel like this is a manga I could introduce to anybody. Honestly, this feels like a better way to introduce somebody to who Yukimura is.
Yeah.
Than Vinland Saga is, because Vinland Saga does not start off as strongly in the sense of understanding what it's trying to do and what's important to it. But I feel like this story, it's nice and short, it's to the point, and it gets its message across every time it tries to send it. And absolutely nails it by the end. Do you have a favorite chapter?
I don't know at all.
It's tough.
This is one of those ones where I kind of wish there's like Yukimura would go back and write some more stuff with the characters.
Yes,
and like
me too.
More like cohesive plot, just to spend more time with them. Like they're like his investigation into Fee's character, or I mean, you also mentioned earlier on like you can kind of give this to anybody and they can read it. I gave I have one friend who came over and I said, hey, just read the first chapter. Just read the first chapter of Planet X.
Yep.
And he read it and was like, oh yeah, that was good. I like that. I was like, there you go, man. Like with Vinland Saga, he didn't really get past the first book. Like I gave him just because I don't think it's like his medium that he's really used to and whatever. And that's fine. But I was just like, hey man, just before you go to bed, read this. And he read it and he was like, dude, that was good. I like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool. There you go. Good stuff.
You know? I've tried to get people to read the first chapter of this too. I definitely I feel like, because like introducing Vinland Saga to people, I'm sure you've been through this plenty of times as well, where you feel like you almost have to warn them like, hey, there's like, I know this seems like it's this, but there's a little more to it. I almost feel like there's some people will like what it is and what it tries to do, but yeah, you gotta get them past the initial impression it makes. With this, I just don't feel that at all. I feel like it states its thesis immediately and doesn't lose its way the whole way. Even though, yes, Hachi loses his way, but not to the same extent that Thorfinn loses his way, because you still have him learning as we're going. You don't have like a long period of him being wrong and the story just letting him continue to be wrong, as much as like the second he starts going off the deep end is when Tanabe comes to continue to represent what this story means, until Hachi has grown to the point where he also represents what the story wants to say. I know in the beginning I said like Hachi didn't interest me at all. I think by the end of this, Hachi is he's still not my favorite character, but I really love him now by the end of it. And like watching the anime with the context of the manga, like I definitely find a more of an attachment to him in the early episodes.
Yeah.
Like just knowing what the journey that he's going to go on. I think the only complaint I probably have is that Yuri has not been relevant since volume 1. I mean, I get it. Like Yukimura kind of like went off the deep end with him, and then focused on Hachi. But I really would have liked Yuri to have a little bit more time. Like he definitely didn't need a whole arc like Fee got, and I'm so thankful Fee got that.
Yeah.
But I would have liked a bit more from him.
Yeah. I think, yeah, and I think this is maybe a bit of an issue with Yukimura in general, and I do wonder this is how like with the Vinland, it's hard to say, but like sometimes with the Vinland arc, I felt like he's just dropped a few arcs, because he's like overloaded himself with the characters and not enough time or something like that. And maybe this is because I've been around for the whole like, maybe it is an issue in earlier of his Vinland Saga arcs, but this final arc, yeah, like. Yuri felt like maybe like an Ina situation in a way where like he has fun scenes, but like his point was used early and Yukimura didn't find another reason.
Exactly, the character's been kind of retired in a way.
But in a way, like Yuri did get quite a bit in that early volume, and you know maybe if there was a more plot centered stuff, or there would be a way to integrate him as well. But yeah, I don't know. It is a little tough. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Either way, the stuff we got from him was so good. Like, I think this is just more of a point to show just how good that stuff was, and how much it attached me to him. Less that like, so I don't see it entirely as a bad thing. It's just it goes to show like the stuff with him was just that good, that I really loved the character and wanted to see more of him. But I still think like the way Hachi sort of takes up the mantle as the real main character throughout the rest of the story is just. The way he grows and the way the person he is at the end, like I was kind of expecting like, okay, he might just become a Thorfinn-like character. It feels like that's like the ultimate like end growth for most of Yukimura's character arcs. They kind of end up in that same spot, but Hachi definitely feels a bit more, a bit different from that. Kind of like I don't know, maybe Sigurd. Like I kind of that kind of end where like you're not sort of full on idealistic person like Thorfinn is, but now you're a very well-rounded person who understands the universe and their place in it so much better. And it feels like Hachi's the kind of person like day to day you can aspire to be in a much more realistic way, and I really like that. It is again like you said, the approachability of the story, the personal feeling of it, how genuine it feels, and how I think grounded it feels. It doesn't feel like it gets too idealistic. It really does feel like, you can, like this is the kind of growth a person like Yukimura would have gone through, and that he wants to pass on to the people reading.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And I think in a way, like Yukimura may have taken a bit of a risk changing the main character, but he went with something probably that's more sustainable, something that could have happened over a longer time.
Yeah, that's true.
Someone he could infuse more of his lessons into better because of that stage in life that he was at.
Yeah.
There's probably reasons why he didn't look at Yuri, and why we love Yuri, and he set such a high standard from it early on. There's Yukimura probably made the right call there.
I don't. What's so weird though is that I don't think at any point Yuri was intended to be the main character.
Yeah, in a weird way.
Like, because Hachi definitely has like when he's introduced, like he's the young like hot-headed guy that every main character in manga tends to be. He's very much like this is the person who's going to go through so much growth throughout the story. And that's why it's kind of strange how much focus Yuri gets, but I don't think at any point I was thinking like Hachi was just a side character. He definitely, like from my first note, I just like, okay, this is our protagonist. I don't really care about him right now. Yeah. But this is definitely our protagonist.
Starts off by trying to hit it with a powerful story. They
exactly.
probably come back to him and be like, hey, people really like this manga, make more. And he's like, oh, okay, well, now I've got to think about a more longer term foundation and just hit Soul with Hachi instead.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm debating. Obviously, Vinland Saga is my favorite manga of all time. I don't know if Planet Test reaches that point. I definitely have a bias towards Yukimura. He's my favorite author, and like it feels like, despite all the rough edges, I love this story so much. Vinland definitely feels like a more put together, well thought out story, but I also feel like it's not fair to Planet Test. One, yes, because it was his first manga, but two, it also wasn't supposed to be, you know, a very like grand journey that was like, because like the journey not being important was the point, right?
Yeah.
So I can't really hold that against it, and I don't know. It's just so, it really just blew me away. I think my expectations were still high for Yukimura, but I also was thinking like, okay, this is his first manga. I'm not going to like give it too much crap.
That.
It still had that, exactly.
Like it was bad in the place where it didn't matter for me, you know? Like
Yeah.
It didn't matter that the plot wasn't, you know, the tightest or whatever. It's like it had good characters and it had deep themes and it was
Yes.
poignant and it was thoughtful, and
And
what
that's
we
what's
needed,
important.
you know. And
Yep.
it's like good stuff. That's winner.
That's exactly it. That's what Yukimura as an author is all about. You're not coming here for like the like grand like you know, plot with like the crazy twists and all that. You're here to see these just profound moments, these ideas, and like these characters grow. And yeah, that's just like his identity as an author, and even in his first work, you just have that. Yeah, I guess that's all I got. I feel like I have so many thoughts about this, but not enough to put into words more than we already have. And I feel like this is just a story that is going to stick with me for a long time. Like ever since the day I finished it, I just think about it nonstop. That like last chapter, I couldn't stop loving people. It's just it's so good. It is just that good. And I really hope that people who haven't read this yet give it the time, because it really does deserve the time, and it is in no way like I would say taken down by its successor. It is its own piece of like fiction that should be given just as much attention. Even though, yes, in a lot of ways, like we've said throughout this, it is like it becomes like a proto version of what Yukimura will go on to want to write and want to say. But it's still so entirely its own, and I absolutely love what it does.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Nope. It's just good.
It's just good.
Just
all right. I guess, yeah, that's it. Thank you, everybody who has watched to this point. I mean, so far, each of these has been about 3 hours, and we've done. We're on the fifth one now, so that's like 15 hours of us talking about this story. And for a story like it, that is relatively short as it is, it just shows like how dense this is. There's always just so much to talk about each chapter. So like even for a chapter like 17 that was a bit more laid back, wasn't trying to be as profound as other chapters are, it still had so much meat to it. And that's like every Yukimura chapter. There's very rarely a chapter from this man that doesn't have something distinct it's trying to tell you.
Yeah.
So yeah,
sure.
Always just so much to say. So yeah, for everybody who has sat through all those hours and found something in our words, thank you so much for giving us your time and hearing us talk. I didn't really have super high expectations for how these videos would perform. I just really wanted to put my thoughts out there on because I feel like a lot of people would be curious, you know, what was Planet Test? I don't know if I'm going to read it, but I'm a huge Vinland Saga fan, and I hope that as my channel hopefully starts to get more and more people who are fans of Yukimura's work, finding it through chapter reviews, might come back to these videos out of curiosity and then pick up one of the greatest manga I've ever read, because Planet Test really is that. So, yeah. Thank you, everybody who's watched. Thank you, Jarkey Bacon, as always, for joining me. I definitely hope we can work together on more stuff in the future, because this was a lot of fun, and you're definitely... It's really fun to read this with somebody who's just as perceptive towards these things, and especially towards like Yukimura as an author, knowing so much about him. So yeah, you've made this experience even better than it would have been alone. So thank you.
No, cheers. It's been a great time. I've enjoyed it a lot. I think, yeah, it was always nice. This series was very rewarding to come together and talk about, because there was more than I could gather into read-throughs. You'd always come with something that I hadn't really thought of before, and that was it. It was a very helpful time where you just come and discuss stuff, and it worked out well. It worked out really good, and I think I definitely feel like I learned more about the piece of media through this process. I'm sure we'll probably do more stuff together in the future.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I think. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, this year I really want to make a lot of small YouTube videos about a lot of other little things I've been reading. I've been wondering about Planet Test video, and I just trying to think of how can I condense it in a really nice way.
True.
So maybe I can do that somehow. I'm gonna definitely watch the manga, the anime, and we can probably convene about that at some point and give maybe overall thoughts about it. Maybe not, just do all 25 episodes in one and see what we think about it or something. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I definitely see that. Definitely, I don't think an episode by episode discussion, but maybe a overall thoughts. I would definitely be interested in coming back to that.
For sure.
All right. So yeah, everyone check out Jarkey Bacon. Check out his videos. I've never seen no one else in this this circle of YouTube puts as much time and effort into their videos and the editing and the scripting. Just absolutely go watch this guy's videos. They're all so good. If you like Vinland Saga, if you like manga in general, if you like media in general, please go and check him out.
Cheers. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. And for more of us, we mentioned it last episode. We've been doing videos with Kyle Entertainment and Elite Ari talking about Vinland Saga Season 2. The next episode of that should be coming out pretty soon, where we're going to be talking about, I believe, episodes 5 through 9, which will include some pretty great moments of Vinland Saga. So definitely check us out there on Kyle Entertainment's channel. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you all around for some more videos, because I definitely am not out of things to talk about. If anything, this series has just inspired me to do even more, because yeah, Planet Test is just a very beautiful story. Please go read it, and hopefully watching this has helped, I guess, send the themes of this story to a bit, I guess, sort of amplify the themes of this story, because it's a message that I would want to send to everybody who tunes in to listen. So thank you, and thank you again, Jarkey, and we will hopefully see you all soon for more videos. Bye.
Bye.